Chapter 382. Was it really Mary's style to challenge someone in a one-on-one battle during the qualifier? Dake Dimming tapped on the magic card, Spell Cage, Little Devil Beast. The Little Devil Beast, which had degenerated due to the disappearance of Pride 3's effect, returned to the magic card. The impatient fiend finally disappeared in front of everyone. However, just when they thought that the sword in the Devil Beast's hand was about to reach its end, it suddenly moved. The single eye in the center of the hilt quietly opened. The ribbon that drilled out from the end of the hilt gradually lengthened, and the end of the ribbon was like a hand with fingers. It did not show any obvious characteristics of a magic fairy. It just quickly flew in front of Dake Dimming and stood in mid-air. Dake did not reach out to grab it, nor did he equip it on the lion beast. The increased attack power of weapons like swords and sabers basically depended on the weapon. Even if the lion beast was equipped with a single scabbard, if it still used its fists to attack, its attack power would not be increased. Now that Mary had publicly invited it, Dake had no reason not to accept the challenge. Lion Beast, are you interested? Remember the website, VIP can't you? 6. The Lion Beast looked at the Tiger Man solemnly. After a while, it turned to look at Dake. Dake said, Mad Tiger, 5-star magic fairy, combat type, fixed killer skill, Mad Tiger Fist. As for magic attack and defense, the magic fairy with the same name had different magic attack and defense, so it could not be determined. However, the magic attack and defense of the Mad Tiger should not be lower than that of the Lion Beast. Both of them were bird beasts, combat-type magic fairies, and it was a battle between a lion and a tiger. On the surface, they were evenly matched. However, in reality, who was stronger and who was weaker would only be known after the battle. The lion beast stretched its muscles and bones, and its eyes gradually filled with fighting spirit. It nodded heavily at Dake. Then let's fight. Both sides hit it off. Mary casually tapped on the Mad Tiger's enchantment and let it face the lion beast in its most basic state. Roar! The Mad Tiger received the order and suddenly roared. The king's aura erupted. The lion beast suddenly trembled and put on a posture similar to Wing Chun in front of the Mad Tiger. This was learned from the wrestling Hawkman. Once this action was done, it gave off a very professional feeling. Mary's interest was even stronger. She immediately shouted, Mad Tiger Fist. The berserk fighting tiger leaned forward and pounced ferociously. Its tiger claws touched the ground and its 4 limbs moved swiftly. It was as fast as lightning. Mad Tiger's intelligence was only 2.0 of a normal magic fairy, but Mary had always been training. Even pigs would have battle instincts after training for a long time, let alone a magic fairy. Moreover, there was already a spiritual connection between her and this berserk battle tiger. This was a sign of the formation of bond. In just a few seconds, the berserker tiger had already arrived in front of the lion beast. Its 4 limbs shook, and its body leaped up. Its back arched like a bridge, and all the strength in its body gathered from the bottom to the top. The tiger claw suddenly clenched into a fist, and from top to bottom, it ruthlessly smashed down on the lion beast's head. The Mad Tiger's movements were fast and agile. It didn't seem like a stiff magic fairy at all. Facing its first great enemy since birth, the lion beast instantly retreated and opened up some distance. When the Mad Tiger's fist missed, it calmly threw a punch at the lion beast's head. This punch was powerful and had the aura of a tyrant. The Mad Tiger dodged to the side at the critical moment, but it was still hit in the left shoulder. It fell from the top and was unsteady. When it landed, it took the punch again. It immediately rolled to the side and screamed. But just as the lion beast relaxed, the berserk fighting tiger, who had rolled for a distance, suddenly flipped over and stood up. As its hind legs stomped on the ground, it suddenly erupted with a powerful speed, and a tiger claw fiercely grabbed at the lion beast's waist. The lion beast couldn't dodge in time and took the claw head-on. Magic power immediately flowed out. But it didn't even frown. Its huge fist came down from above and smashed into the back of the Mad Tiger's head, smashing it to the ground. The Mad Tiger groaned, but its claws supported itself on the ground in time. The part of its body behind its waist seemed to have a mind of its own, and its steel whip-like tail swept towards the lion beast. The lion beast's eyes were sharp and its hands were fast. It reached out with its left hand and grabbed the mad tiger's tail with its right hand. It actually pulled the mad tiger off the ground and made a circle in the air before crashing to the ground. Pum! It was obvious that the mad tiger's chin had fallen to the ground. Its face was instantly distorted. Even Dake didn't expect that the lion beast would be able to gain such an advantage in a single exchange. But after gaining the advantage, the lion beast didn't follow up with another attack. Instead, it waited for the mad tiger to recover. It stood with its hands behind its back, showing its magnanimity. At this moment, the two magic fairies suddenly whistled over their heads, but they didn't look down at them. The contestants who were still fighting were clearly not interested in the duel between them. Moreover, whether it was Dake or Mary, they were both contenders for the top 8. Since the two of them wanted to play a one-on-one battle in the chaos, most people were happy to see it happen. Moreover, the contestants were actually quite interested in their one-on-one battle. When they commanded their magic fairies to fight, they would look at them from time to time. In just 2 breaths, the mad tiger had already stood up again. Under Mary's command, it regained its morale and gathered its momentum. When its momentum reached its peak, it suddenly took a step forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, each step became heavier. When it took the 3rd step, its entire body leaped up again. It suddenly let out a tiger roar, clenched its claws into fists, and punched out like lightning. This time, it used its sure-kill skill, Mad Tiger Fist. The lion beast's gaze was solemn as it tried to parry. However, the Mad Tiger Fist emphasized the word mad. Its punches were like a storm, and there was no trace of it at all. The lion beast could only cross its arms to block. The mad tiger's punches became faster and faster, causing its arms to swell. Roar! After a full half a minute of punching, the mad tiger roared and threw out the last punch that gathered all its momentum. When that punch was thrown, it was as if there was a huge tiger pouncing on its food behind it, moving forward with its long arm. The lion beast was actually sent flying by this punch. Lower your center of gravity. After flying a few meters, the lion beast took a step back and lowered its center of gravity. After dragging it for half a meter, it finally landed on the ground. It panted heavily, its hands and forearms trembling non-stop. It had consumed a lot of energy. How is it? The corners of Mary's mouth curled up slightly. She was quite satisfied with her battle pet's performance. She was indeed proud to be able to train a magic fairy with 2.0 intelligence to such a level. However, after feeling proud, she felt a little regretful. Before the bond was formed, the mad tiger still lacked some self-awareness. It was far from having more potential than Dake's lion beast. In the face of Mary's provocation, Dake only muttered, "Lion beast, have you learned it?" The lion beast nodded slightly, and its hands gradually moved. Then, it slowly walked towards the mad tiger. As it approached, its body suddenly sped up. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, each step became heavier. By the 3rd step, its aura had already risen, and there was no longer a trace of the decline from being repelled just now. The lion's roar that erupted from its throat was steady and restrained. Its right arm retreated slightly, and it took the last step. In its mind, it instantly recalled the posture of the Hawkman when he hit the wooden dummy. It fused it with the Mad Tiger Fist, of the Mad Tiger Fist, of the Mad Tiger Fist, and threw out its own lion fist. The trajectory of its punch could be traced, but the strength of its punch was heavier and faster. A memory that seemed to have been rooted in the depths of its brain quietly emerged. This made its punches faster, stronger, and more flexible. The mad tiger went from being able to withstand it calmly at the beginning to barely being able to withstand it. In the end, it completely lost its guard. It only took half a minute. However, the expression between the lion beast's brows became brighter and brighter. In the end, it suddenly shouted and blurted out, "Beast King Fist." In an instant, a lion-shaped energy wave was released from its right fist. In an instant, it pierced through the mad tiger's defense and sent it flying. Unlike when the lion beast was sent flying, the mad tiger's figure was almost destroyed. Its magic power was clearly at the bottom. It seemed that as long as a gust of wind blew, it would turn into specks of light and dissipate. As for the lion beast that had thrown out the Beast King fist, its aura had already risen to its peak. The king's aura that was originally lacking became denser. It stood there, maintaining its punching posture. The lion's mane fluttered backward, immersed in the aftertaste of that punch. The applause suddenly thundered. "You won." Mary raised her magic card somewhat enviously and kept the mad tiger in the air back into the card. Then, she raised her hand and gave Dake and the lion beast a thumbs up. "Very good. Thank you." Dake nodded slightly and turned to look at the lion beast. The battle with Senior Mary could not be considered a real duel. The mad tiger clearly still had a killing move that it had not used. However, after experiencing this battle, the lion beast had clearly grown by leaps and bounds. Next, it should be able to participate in the battle better. Dake reached out and took out 2 energy potions. After summoning them, he threw them to the lion beast. After taking 2 bottles of energy potions, the lion beast quickly recovered to its full state. Only then did Dake look at the big screen again. He saw that he, who was originally ranked 6th, and Senior Mary, who was ranked 7th, had already fallen out of the top 8. There's still time. He was not in a hurry. He reached out and grabbed the single scabbard. Then, he muttered, "Weapon transformation," and threw the single scabbard, which had its eyes closed again, to the lion beast. The lion beast raised its hand to catch the single scabbard, and looked at the battlefield. The qualifier was still going on intensely. Next, it was its home ground. Doc had been observing the battle for a full 20 minutes. He had long discovered that the third-year seniors were restraining themselves. They didn't go overboard in summoning magical spirits that were too strong. They also rarely used those underworld ritual cards and magic spell cards. Currently, the highest-ranked magic spirits that had appeared were only a few 6-star magic spirits, and they were still within the range of the second tier. The 5-star lion beast was already able to occupy a place among them. Moreover, it was also equipped with the Holy Sword. Heroes and holy swords were natural partners. The lion beast had never practiced swordsmanship before. Its talent was also based on the existence of the Beast King fist, and it leaned towards bare-handed combat. However, when it held the single scabbard in its hand, it was as if something was guiding it. Alright, it was this, as if. After all, the single scabbard was a weapon transformation of a magic spirit. It had a consciousness. Moreover, this consciousness was clearer and wiser than the consciousness of the holy sword before it was refined. When the lion beast charged into the battlefield with a single scabbard, it was not charging in alone at all. Instead, the 2 of them advanced and retreated together. In front of the lion beast with an attack power of 3,800, an ordinary 5-star magic spirit could not withstand a second sword strike. Moreover, there were many 4-star magic spirits in the field. The lion beast carried out Dake's orders with extremely high intelligence. It tried its best to wander to the edge and reap the lives of the 4-star magic spirits. It avoided all unnecessary conflicts. When the demon beast carried out this order, it was like a flying bandit. When the lion beast carried out this order, it was like a sword-wielding hero. When it started working, Dake Diming's points began to rise steadily again. However, Dake did not bet his chance of qualifying on the lion beast. After all, although the lion beast was very strong, it was not as agile as the demon beast. It could neither fly nor use instant transmission to move the battlefield. Once it was surrounded, it was very likely to die. Therefore, Dake was already preparing to summon his 3rd magic spirit outside the arena, Multiform Monster. He would use a Bliss 3 to raise the multiform monster to 4-star and then transform into Senior Sister Winnie's Ice Chamber Girl. After that, he only needed to use Blizzard Tornado to stabilize his ranking. In short, his current goal was to qualify. Although the third-year seniors seemed to be more inclined to enjoy the duel and victory, Dake came with a purpose this time. He wanted to obtain the door card that belonged to the winner. In the proper way. Not through the back door. The entire process of the competition did not go as smoothly as he had imagined. The third last minute of the competition. The lion beast had just pulled Dake's ranking back to 8th place when a strong enemy appeared in front of it. The shadow under its feet suddenly opened its mouth and raised its head from the ground, sneering at it. At that moment, the lion beast, who did not have much experience in this kind of thing, was shocked and subconsciously retreated. However, the shadow extended from its feet. No matter how it moved, the shadow would follow closely. He. The shadow's sneer became more and more sinister. This reminded the lion beast of its guardian alliance, Dream Demon. Of course, the little dream demon always sneaked out of the magic card and wandered into other people's dreams to spread horror everywhere. Therefore, its real guardian alliance was only Meow Meow. When it thought of the dream demon, the fear in the lion beast's heart inexplicably disappeared. It stopped retreating and raised the holy sword in its hand. With a calm expression, it stabbed at the shadow that raised its head and laughed sinisterly. Dong! Before the tip of the sword touched it, the shadow was unrestrained. After the tip of the sword touched it, it suddenly screamed and struggled desperately like a pigeon that was thrown into a pot of oil. The outline of the shadow was crazily distorted. The lion beast's expression became more and more calm. It injected magic into the single scabbard. With a systematic training method to recognize and control magic, Dake's magic fairy had basically mastered the magic output method. The lion beast had learned it well. At that moment, the single scabbard shone brightly. Ah! An incomparably shrill scream suddenly came out from the lion beast's shadow. Under the light of the holy sword, the magic fairy that had drilled into the shadow could no longer hold on and escaped from the lion beast's shadow as if it was burned by fire. The black shadow rushed out and revealed its original body about 5 or 6 meters away from the lion beast. It was actually a ghost-type magic fairy with a vague human shape. At this time, whether it was the teachers and students in the ring or the tens of thousands of spectators in the audience, everyone's attention was attracted by the sudden bright light and ear-piercing scream. Even the contestants in the arena could not help but pay attention. The commentator in the commentator's seat, Zach Wilson, finally found another focus of his commentary. In fact, he had also given a guiding commentary when Dake and Senior Mary were fighting one-on-one. However, after that, he shifted his focus to the other contestants. At this moment, when he pulled back to the lion beast, Wilson suddenly realized that he had missed a lot of things. That sword, a sword that could force a ghost-type magic fairy with the ability of latent shadow out of the shadow, would immediately make people think of that. However, before he was sure, Wilson did not dare to speak carelessly. In fact, there were many weapons with similar abilities. Many magic tools in the saint had holy effects. However, this did not prevent him from bragging about the sword. No, wait. Wasn't this sword always equipped on the fiend beast's body? Wilson's tone was stagnant as he suddenly found a point. Can anyone tell me, how can a dark-type devil be equipped with such a sword that obviously has holy characteristics? Similar doubts spread like a virus. Students, professors, and the audience who had a basic understanding of relevant knowledge were suddenly stirred up. So much so that the discussion almost caught up with the cheers of the rest of the audience. More and more people were paying attention to the lion beast's battle. However, many people only knew half of it. Then, they relied on their imagination to build their own framework and speculated about things that they did not understand in reality. Therefore, very few people were able to explore and find useful things. At a very close distance. After White Gouda sensed the aura of the holy sword more clearly, he became suspicious. He had never really seen the actual holy sword. He had only used the holy sword curse to create the holy sword. Therefore, he could not confirm his guess. However, this trace of doubt was deeply rooted in his mind. He was not greedy for the holy sword. However, if the lion-type magic fairy was using the real holy sword, did it also have the qualifications of a hero? It was impossible, right? How could a magic fairy have the qualifications of a hero? Moreover, the previous fiend had also used this sword. No matter what, the fiend could not be a hero. White Gouda patted his head hard, trying to dispel this unrealistic thought. It's a hero. What a warm aura. Yvette gently stretched her shoulders and spoke in a light tone. Although she had felt it when the lion beast was first summoned, she finally confirmed it when it truly activated the holy characteristic of the single scabbard. Magic fairies with the qualifications of a hero were not special cases. It was just that ordinary people would not know about it. After all, in the classification of magic fairies, there were human species and subhuman species. There had been more than one grand mage who had tried to replicate historical figures through magic fairies. Of course, this kind of replication could only replicate an empty shell. However, if it was successful, even an empty shell would cause a great sensation. Later, as the research of those grand mages was exposed to the public, more and more mages joined forces to ban it and classified it as a taboo. After all, most of the mages did not want to be desecrated like this after they died. But even so, occasionally, there would be historical figures that would be created through the normal process of magic refinement. That kind of situation was unavoidable. If the impact was not great, the mages would turn a blind eye. As for whether there were other people doing similar experiments in the dark, it was a matter that could not be verified. However, there were records that the Holy Church had eradicated several heretical sects that had tried to use similar methods to refine a god. No one knew if it was true. No one knew if they could really refine a god. However, in theory, even if they succeeded, the refined god could only be an empty shell. No one knew what would happen when the time came. Would the empty shell of a soulless god become a parasitic field for evil things? After hearing the word hero from Yvette's mouth, Claire could not control the expression on her face again. After a long while, she suddenly frowned and said, "Hero, holy sword, is this a bad sign?" Yvette glanced at her and said calmly, "What will come will come. It's just that I didn't expect Darling to obtain the possibility of a hero candidate in this way." At some point, their conversation was completely covered by the sound of the wind. Even the two little princesses, who were close by, could not hear their voices. In the duel arena, after the lion beast expelled the ghost element magic elf from his shadow, he cautiously raised his sword. Meanwhile, the indistinct humanoid spectral magic elf was gradually recovering from its violent trembling. The two sides were 5 or 6 meters away from each other and confronted each other. Dake's gaze directly swept past the ghost element magic elf and looked at the third-year senior opposite him. That person was obviously the senior of the owner of this magic elf. He had flaxen hair with the ends of his hair draped over his shoulders. The color of his eyes was deep black, his facial features were soft and gloomy, and his skin was white but not smooth. Dake did not have a deep impression of him. Perhaps he had interacted with him in the noble house's tower, but he did not have much memory of him. However, the other party's gaze did not seem to be without purpose. Could he be from the Noble History Research Society? Dake subconsciously recalled the scene in the candidate room before the start of the duel. However, he then noticed that the Noble History Research Society's senior, Mike Owen, was commanding the magic elf to fight with someone on the other side. In his information, Mike Owen was still the core member of the Noble History Research Society who could invite him on behalf of the society. Since Mike Owen did not make a move, the possibility of him being from the Noble History Research Society was relatively low. However, if he had nothing to do with the Noble History Research Society, why was this gloomy senior staring at him like that? Dake could not help but touch his handsome face and suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He did not know if the senior opposite him sensed something and suddenly looked away. However, his gaze immediately turned to the battle between the magic elf and the lion. Shadow Ghost, Night Assault. Kieran gave the order without a second thought. The elf named Shadow Ghost suppressed its resistance to the holy sword and unleashed its ultimate skill at the lion. Card name, Shadow Ghost. Type, Elf card. Level, Race, Undying. Attribute, Spectre/Dark. Magic, 2500. Attack, 2100. Defense, 1400. Sure kill skills. Hidden Shadow, Night Assault, Shadow Kill. The battle began in an instant. Shadow Ghost's humanoid body suddenly expanded and turned into a black curtain. It flew in the direction of the lion beast as it screamed. In the blink of an eye, the sky above the lion beast was covered by a huge curtain of darkness. The light dimmed in an instant. Black lines fell from the curtain of darkness, densely packed and eerie. One of the lines touched the lion beast's shoulder and it immediately felt its magic being sucked away. However, just as it moved, the curtain of darkness above its head suddenly fell. The entire curtain of darkness was wrapped up, as if it was going to swallow all the creatures in the area. The lion beast's expression became serious. It bent its knees slightly and the single scabbard in its hand released an even more intense holy light due to the injection of magic. At that moment, the curtain of darkness formed by Shadow Ghost shrouded down. However, the lion beast held the holy sword upside down and leaped up like a dragon. The holy sword, which was emitting holy light, was raised from the bottom to the top and swung the sword like a storm. The holy attribute of the single scabbard came into effect and the suppression of the dark attribute increased by a full 50%. The lion beast's sword cut countless cracks in the curtain of darkness as if it was cutting tofu. The light of the rising sun leaked through the cracks. As the darkness was dispelled, the black lines melted at a speed visible to the eye. Clang! The moment the lion beast landed, its knees bent slightly and dissipated the force. The sword had returned to its scabbard. The curtain of darkness formed by Shadow Ghost was delayed for a moment before it suddenly exploded. After that, there was no longer a trace of darkness above its head. Points +1. Dake sensed the lion beast's condition through the magic card, but his gaze was always on the gloomy third-year senior. However, he saw that after his magic fairy was killed, he was not angry. Instead, he smiled and opened his mouth to say something. The shouts of the audience and the commentator drowned out the sound. However, the senior's expression and the shape of his lips made Dake instantly alert. He immediately reminded the lion beast by injecting magic power into the magic card. The next moment, the lion beast's shadow moved again. 3. 5 points in 1. 7100/12,000. It's 12 o'clock. I'll go first. Next update will be tomorrow morning or noon. It's the last day of the month. Throw away the tickets and items that you forgot to throw away. If they're expired, it'll be heartbreaking. Chapter 383. At that moment, Dake thought that the Shadow Ghost wasn't dead. But the increase in points disproved this inference. He has 2 Shadow Ghost cards? Just as this thought arose, the lion's shadow had already spread in all directions. It completely lost the shape of a shadow and turned into a pool of pitch-black shadows. The lion suddenly felt its legs go soft and its 2 feet sank into the shadow swamp. Twisted arms drilled out of the shadows and firmly grabbed its ankles, making it unable to move. The lion's eyes flashed and he unsheathed his sword without hesitation and stabbed it into the ground. But before the tip of the sword touched the ground, the gloomy third-year student blurted out 2 words: Shadow Kill. As a Shadow Ghost, this Shadow Ghost had 3 sure kill skills. One was the inherent sure kill skill, Hidden Shadow. One was the death coil that it had just used, and the last one was the same, Shadow Kill. The shadow swamp under the lion's feet suddenly churned violently and like boiling water, pitch-black bubbles appeared one after another. Remember, https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP. When the bubbles burst, countless shadows formed into blades that soared into the sky. For a moment, they froze in the air and densely surrounded the lion. Lion. Sword dance. Almost at the same time, Dake's shout sounded. Roar. The lion suddenly let out a fierce roar, and a trace of undetectable blood color appeared in the depths of its eyes. Then, it held the sword with both hands and bent one knee slightly. It raised the sword that was stabbed into the ground again and stabbed it down fiercely. At that moment, endless air currents appeared around its body and spun around it at an accelerated speed. Countless shadow blades flew over at this moment. The effect of sword dance formed a storm that protected the entire body and blew away a large number of shadow blades in an instant. Only a few shadow blades rushed into the range of the storm, but they were quickly weakened by the air currents that were constantly blowing out. They only left small wounds on the lion's body. The lion felt a slight pain on its body and suddenly injected magic power. The single scabbard once again burst out with a sacred snow-white light. Boom! The entire shadow swamp of Death Coil was quickly dispersed by the halo that bloomed from the tip of the sword. The lion beast's shadow returned to normal in an instant. As for the second shadow ghost, it screamed as it tried to escape. The lion beast's feet were pushed out of the ground as the shadow swamp disappeared. It moved quickly and chased after Shadow Ghost like a heavy tank. It used the Lion King ball to control the single scabbard like a dagger and ran at a high speed. When the Shadow Ghost returned to its original form, the lion beast's tall body was already in front of it. Following that, he swung his sword backward. Another slash. Double chop. With the support of the sword dance, the second strike pierced through the void because the Shadow Ghost had been insta-killed. Points +1. Dake's ranking became slightly more stable after gaining 2 points in a row. With only 2 to 3 minutes left in the elimination round, the remaining contestants weren't weak. Wanting to kill their magic guide sprites was no longer an easy task. Dake was deeply grateful to the 2 Shadow Ghosts that had delivered themselves to his doorstep. And this time, when points +1 appeared, Dark finally noticed that the points of Stuart Phone, who was ranked second, had decreased by a little. The changes that happened at the same time made Dake immediately realize that the gloomy senior was Stuart Phone. So, who is he? Stuart Phone was the son of a meritorious baron. He didn't have a manor or territory. Because of his father's meritorious service, he was awarded meritorious service and the title of baron, but it wasn't hereditary. Thus, if Stuart Phone wanted to become a noble, he had to work hard. Under normal circumstances, there were only 2 ways to become a noble. Buy or sell. Buy with resources. Or sell yourself. In fact, as a third-year student with outstanding results, Stuart Phone would naturally become an official archmage after graduation. Whether or not he became a noble wasn't a necessary criterion for him to cross over. However, his family had lost their ability to work due to the war. His unemployed father hoped that he could become a noble. Thus, after he entered the Shang Malian Academy, he thought of ways to join the Noble History Research Society, which had extremely high requirements for the members' family backgrounds, relying on his results. Even so, the consequence of using all his strength to force his way into a circle that didn't belong to him was being marginalized. In the Noble History Research Society, he belonged to the lowest level. In order to change this situation, Stuart Phone had made a move against Dark Diamond while he was stable in the next round. Logically speaking, his attack wasn't sudden at all. After all, the Lion Beast had been arrogant for a long time. As a competitor on the same field, there was no problem in educating this arrogant junior. The problem was that his gaze was too sharp. So, just target the magic elf. Why are you looking at the contestants? However, Stuart Phone didn't do it on purpose. As a student who had always been working hard to cross over, Stuart Phone valued class from the bottom of his heart. In fact, he couldn't tolerate a first-year student sneaking into a third-year group. Yes, he had class cleanliness in this aspect. As the saying goes, the more you lack something, the more you value it. From the bottom of his heart, Stuart didn't want Dake Dimming to advance in this qualifier. However, he wasn't a fool. After the 2 Shadow Ghosts hit a wall one after another, he finally suppressed his urge to continue fighting. Provoking the son of a duke was simply too irrational. In fact, winning and losing were common. In a duel, one's background didn't matter. Unfortunately, there would always be people who paid special attention to these external matters when they felt guilty. However, Dake didn't know who he was at all and wasn't interested in his situation. If he didn't glare at Dake, Dake wouldn't even pay attention to him. However, his glare left an impression on Dake. The competition continued as usual. Zach Wilson's commentary gradually became more and more spirited. Just now, when the lion beast was fighting against the two shadow beasts, his voice was full of emotion and passion. He performed very well. This made him feel that he had found his state. He would definitely be able to perform better in the next competition. After more than a minute, when he turned his attention back to Dake, he said, excitedly, "There's less than a minute until the end of the qualifier battle. Let's take a look at the current rankings. First place is still the unshakable Winnie Scarty. Second place, Tom Nixon." At this final moment, contestant Nixon from the third-year Academy of Fools actually caught up and surpassed Stuart Phone. It seems that the defeat of the two shadow ghosts had a huge impact on him. As for contestant Dake Dimming, who killed the two shadow ghosts. As the only first-year contestant who could advance in this qualifier, contestant Dake Dimming actually moved up one place and is now in 7th place. It seems that his advancement is already set in stone. I really didn't expect a first-year contestant to be able to break through in this qualifier battle where even the third-year contestants participated. Dake Dimming is indeed worthy of being the first-year Noble Academy's top student, the winner of the Crimson Star. Let's take a look at the other contestants. 4th place, Mike Owen. Third-year Noble Academy's Mike Owen, with his steady demeanor, has successfully taken 4th place. Immediately after 5th place is Knight Academy's Paul Dulles. Glory Knight Paul Dulles, who successfully passed the Knight exam last year and became a Glory Knight, has advanced into the top 5. 6th place, Elsie Kevin, 2nd year. Although many third-year contestants didn't participate in this Easter Duel Festival, contestant Kevin was able to stand out among the third-year contestants, proving his strength. As expected of a top student in the 2nd year, a star of tomorrow worth looking forward to. Finally, 8th place, third-year Knight Academy's Harrison. No, it's Noble Academy's Mary Bond. 2nd year Noble Academy's Mary Bond overtook contestant Harris Barker by 1 point. In the final 30 seconds, let's see if contestant Harris Barker can complete the reversal and regain his right to advance. Oh! Harris Barker's Triceratops was taken away by Mary Bond's martial arts tortoise. There's no more suspense. 8th place, 2nd grade aristocrat house, Mary Bond. What a surprise! There are actually 2 contestants from the 2nd grade who have successfully qualified. Let us give a warm round of applause to all the contestants who have qualified. Pa 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 pa. The chaos of the audition finally came to an end amidst the thunderous applause. Dake steadily advanced to the next round in 7th place. Following that, the qualifiers for the 4th to 6th years would begin. For both the students and the audience, this was an even more shocking visual feast. Although the battle royale of the 1st to 3rd years was exciting, it was still restrained. However, in the qualifier between the 4th and 6th years, no matter how much he restrained himself, he couldn't restrain himself. The appearance of every third-rank magic guide fairy could make the audience go wild. Moreover, many people were here for the Sky White Dragon on the poster. For the fanatical fans, as long as they could see the Sky White Dragon in person, it was already worth the ticket price. Of course, they didn't know that the owner of the Sky White Dragon didn't participate in this qualifier. Pan Duola Doragon sat quietly in the last row of the circular belt, less than 10 meters away from the Valkyrie in the first row of the audience seats. Not only was she holding the chubby chili plant in her arms, but she was also holding the sentient familiar, the winged dragon whelp. The winged dragon whelp, which wasn't thinner than the chili plant at all, would reach out its short hands and poke the chili plant's cheeks whenever it was free, making it cry out, "Mimi," non-stop. Dake Dimming's victory was within her expectations. What was unexpected was that it was too easy. It only used 2 main forces to successfully enter the top 8, which was surprising. I'm afraid the key point is that sword. When did he refine such a powerful equipment card? It seems that if I continue to slack off, he might even catch up to me. Panduola separated the two little things that almost fought. Looking at the blue sky and white clouds above her head, she was in a good mood. This school year, she always felt that her luck was really good. It seemed that since she met Dake, many things had slowly changed. Especially the period after Christmas, it was the luckiest period of her life. That changed her destiny and gave her hope for the future. Freedom City. City Lord Montefiore subconsciously stuffed snacks into her mouth, but her eyes were always fixed on Dake, who was about to leave. No, on his magic fairy, the Lion Beast. As the Valkyrie's comrade, the Sun Warrior Suna Montefiore had of course worked with the hero Brett God. She had even come into contact with many hero candidates. People with hero's aptitude would give off a very different feeling. According to the Holy Church's explanation, in order to protect humans, the Holy once divided into three. After these three divided fetuses grew up, one of them became an unparalleled hero. Another one became an omniscient sage. The last one became an incomparably noble emperor. And all the heroes after that were the descendants of the first hero. They were the orthodox children of God. Therefore, the Holy Church would recruit heroes in every period and give support to those with hero quality. With the change of time, the hero bloodline gradually scattered, and even became silent in the body. In theory, there should be more and more people with hero quality, but because there was an awakening stage in the middle, it made people feel that the specific number was decreasing, and thus it was always within a certain range. There was always a saying among the people, since ancient times, whenever a hero appeared, it was when humans needed him. But in reality, the real situation was that whenever a large number of people with hero quality awakened, it was a sign of impending disaster. Compared to the huge human race, there were many people with hero quality, but not many people who awakened their bloodline to become hero candidates, and there was only one true hero. That lion-type magic guide sprite has hero quality. City Lord Montefiore finally muttered. She finally accepted her own judgment. Lion people belong to the subhuman race. In a broad sense, they are also one of the human races. It's not strange for heroes to appear. In fact, my husband is a subhuman with hero quality. Aurora seemed to have only just learned of this. She raised her head and said in surprise, "Father is a hero candidate?" City Lord Montefiore revealed a rare quiet smile. That's not the case. He didn't accept the Holy Church's title. But he can use the Holy Sword. Aurora blinked and said shyly, "So, I also have the possibility of becoming a hero?" City Lord Montefiore couldn't help but laugh. "With your appearance, it's impossible for your entire life. In fact, most hero bloodlines are already very thin. Only after receiving the recognition of countless holy swords can they use the holy sword to make up for the bloodline and become a true hero. Shangmalian Academy has a child named Blake God. His hero bloodline should be the most mellow, and he has the most hope of becoming a hero." Aurora thought for a moment and said hesitantly, "So, the process of becoming a hero is actually just a process of collecting holy swords?" City Lord Montefiore didn't refute. "You're right if you say that." "Aurora, that's so boring," City Lord Montefiore said solemnly. "It is meaningful." She then turned to Aertii and asked, "Aertii, what do you think?" Aertii was leisurely tasting the cake. She stuck out her tongue and licked the white stain at the corner of her mouth. "Dake Dimming. He's very brave and very kind. City Lord Montefiore, I'm asking you, what do you think of that magic guide sprite?" Aertii then said, "Like master, like magic guide sprite." F***ck. City Lord Montefiore suddenly frowned. If it wasn't for her daughter beside her, she would have already pounced on him. But in the end, she sighed and didn't ask any more questions. Aertii never directly responded to this kind of thing. This was probably due to her responsibility as a principal. In principle, Shangmalian Academy shouldn't participate in the disputes of the mortal world. But in the battle between the demons and humans, it clearly showed its bias. No one knew what kind of price Aertii, as the principal, paid for this. People always praised the heroes who were raised to the heavens, but they didn't know that in unknown places, there were even more heroes who were silently contributing. Shang Molian Open Arena. When the countdown for the mass battle of the qualifiers ended, Dark smiled and kept the tired lion beast back into the magic card. Then he waved his hand, and the single scabbard came to his side. He hung the single scabbard on his waist, walked 2 steps, smiled, and put it back into the magic card. In the end, the final plan of summoning the monster of variety was not carried out. He had already successfully passed. As soon as the competition ended, Anna walked briskly and skipped over. She was originally quite disappointed, but who asked someone to have a negative score while she had a positive score? How could she not be happy when she compared them? So happy people were always good at finding happiness. Dake, you're still the best. Anna looked up at the handsome side of the blonde youth's face, and her fingers were a little itchy. But just as she touched Dake's sleeve, she retracted it as if she had been electrocuted. Dake smiled. How many points did you get? Anna turned her eyes and said, 10 points, a double-digit number. Yes, not only a positive score, but a double-digit number. Dake tapped her forehead and smiled. Not bad. Let's go, let's find Luo C. I want to watch the next elimination battle among the seniors from the audience. Anna nodded, okay. Then the two walked toward the contestants' passage, turned into the fork, and entered the circular belt. And the intimate gesture of the two walking together fell into the eyes of the observant people. 5 points in 12000/12000/11,000. Chapter 384. Freedom City. From the moment Dake entered the arena, Aurora had been observing him from a close distance through a Urtie's magic mirror. Aurora wasn't a girl who was overly obsessed with appearances, but who wouldn't like beautiful people? Dake Diming's appearance, even a strict person wouldn't be able to pick out any flaws. His meticulous focus during the competition, his calmness when the magic elf was in danger, his gentleness and dependability when he asked for the opinion of the magic elf when he received an invitation, his calmness when he won and his calmness when he faced evil intentions were all displayed in this competition. Impeccable. He was a completely different person from the rumors that had been spreading in recent years. It even made people feel that those rumors were deliberately made up by someone. But from the information revealed in the conversation between her mother and the principal, it didn't seem to be the case. Can a person really change so much in such a short period of time? Aurora thought that it was possible when she thought about the time she started to understand things when she was 5 years old. Website https://m Vipkanshu VIP. But this Dake Diming made her feel a sense of unfamiliarity. She had always had an impression of the person she wanted to marry, but he shouldn't be like this. Aurora patiently watched, slowly replacing her old impression with the image in front of her. She felt a little disappointed. There were only a few months left before she became a first-year student at the Shang Molian Academy. She was about to leave the familiar environment, say goodbye to her mother who loved her, and go to a strange and distant place to study. Aurora wasn't without a trace of resistance. But as she grew older, the child would have to leave the swaddling clothes of their parents. It was only a matter of time. In the future of the academy, the young man who had been with her since she was young was likely to occupy a large part of her life. Originally, she was very confident that she could integrate herself into Dake Diming's life and do everything that she should do well. When the time came, she wouldn't have to think too much and would be able to walk down the path naturally. Wasn't there a phrase called, "Love grows with time"? Aurora had always thought that 5 years should be enough for both parties to get used to each other's existence. When the time came for them to graduate and get married, success would follow naturally. But now, she was a little lost. Dake Diming was much more outstanding than she had expected. It was so outstanding that she didn't know how to fit in. Not to mention integrating into his life. And such an outstanding and charming target would definitely attract people who liked him, right? Aurora's gaze fell on the girl who was walking side by side with Dake Diming. This caused her pupils to contract and her heart to tremble. She was a very cute girl with silver hair that was similar to hers. Her big eyes seemed to have a soul that was moving. He was in the first grade, so he should be 12 years old. He was 1 year older than her, but he looked younger. Perhaps she still looked slightly older than her? Moreover, he was different from her, who couldn't laugh freely. He was a very cheerful child, and his smile was very infectious. Being with such a child, there must be endless fun every day, right? From an outsider's point of view, it was obvious that the girl had a good impression of Dake. Aurora could not help but lower her head to look at her chest, her heart becoming more and more hesitant. Can I really? City Lord Montefiore was actually a rough but meticulous person. She immediately saw through her daughter's thoughts and pretended to ask casually, "Aertii, who is that child? Is she also in the first grade?" Principal Aertii revealed a faint smile. Anna Great Bear, the beloved daughter of the giant bear family. That giant bear family? Are you sure? City Lord Montefiore's calm face could not be maintained any longer. There was nothing she could do. Everyone in the Great Bear family was a true, giant bear. City Lord Montefiore and Viscount Great Bear had even fought in the same trench. She could not imagine that such a cute child was actually the daughter of the giant bear family. It can't be that she has reverted to her ancestry, right? No, even if she reverted to her ancestry, she should have turned into a bear, right? City Lord Montefiore could not help but facepalm. Principal Aertii said, "It's Camilla's child." City Lord Montefiore's eyes widened. That Camilla? Principal Aertii pursed his lips and nodded with a smile. City Lord Montefiore bit her lips. That Camilla actually married into the giant bear family and gave birth to such a daughter? Aurora had been listening quietly. Only now did she raise her head and ask, "Mother, which aunt is Camilla?" City Lord Montefiore turned her head and said, "Silver Wolf Knight Camilla, a shameless woman. Aurora, you must not lose to her daughter, do you understand?" "Oh." Aurora nodded subconsciously. Then she immediately felt that something was wrong. "Isn't the Silver Wolf Knight father's?" City Lord Montefiore licked her lips. Her eyes seemed to be burning with fire. "That's right, she's your father's half-sister." Aurora suddenly understood. "Then Anna is my cousin?" Anna is not a needle." In the capital of the kingdom, Yalvet couldn't help but blurt out as she watched Anna disappear with Dake. Ever since she saw her in the new bee competition, she felt that this child was very talented. She was also very cute and her eyes were pure. Anna and Anna, they're both Anna. Third Princess Chi lay on the Valkyrie's lap and quietly reached out to grab the white cat model in her hand. Yalvet gently moved the model of the Dilu beast away. She thought about the letter she received from Montefiore a while ago, which contained a picture of her daughter. In the picture, Aurora looked quite similar to Anna. Aurora's reputation was also very good. It was said that she had already started helping her mother manage things when she was 10 years old. When she grew up, she would definitely be a very good helper. For her precious son, who was very resistant to related matters, if he had such a good helper, then his life would be relatively easier in the future. At that time, Yalvet felt that Aurora was really good. However, humans were greedy by nature. The so-called contentment was also built on the basis of rationality. Now, Yalvet felt that Anna was also very good. This made her have some happy worries. As for the two little princesses on the side, they were still a little too playful. After Dake Dimming and Anna arrived at the ring together, they quickly found Luo-Si. However, he immediately realized that there was only one empty seat next to Luo-Si that hadn't been opened yet. This made him feel a little awkward. Anna didn't think so much. She ran in front of Luo-Si in a few steps and happily told him about her encounter in the big battle of the auditions. When Dake walked over, she moved her little butt and squeezed Luo-Si to the side, making a 3/4 space. She winked at Dake. Dake hesitated for a moment, but still sat down in the empty seat. The three children were close together, smiling warmly. The breath of spring came with the spring breeze. However, it was drizzling in the capital of the kingdom. Because the first Princess Elisha had observed the arrival of the rain in advance, she had already changed the preaching in the square to indoors. People sat in the warm room and listened to her talk. Half of the people sitting in the spacious hall were men and women. The first princess mainly talked about the grassroots, the future, children's education, the construction of houses, the legal system, safety, women's liberation, and so on. She didn't look strong. She used the unique advantage of being a woman to make her tone as friendly as possible, making people put themselves in her shoes and follow her train of thought. On the other side, however, Prince Charles did not do so. He only ordered people to give out raincoats when the drizzle was about to arrive, and he himself preached in the rain to make the atmosphere more imposing. However, his preaching was actually no different from what the first princess said, except for the topic of women's liberation. As for the rejection of other races and discrimination against subhumans, he didn't mention it at all. Of course, he couldn't talk about these things in a preaching that was mainly to gain favorability. However, the core idea of internal development was different from the first princess's idea. He was more inclined to external expansion, using achievements and territory expansion to attract hot-blooded men. The preaching of both sides was very similar and attracted a specific group of people. And the atmosphere was relatively different. The resulting effect was probably very different. But as the rain became heavier, this Easter preaching event would most likely end at noon. The first princess planned to rush to the Shang Malian dueling hall after the preaching, thinking that she might be able to have lunch with her two sisters. The first prince planned to go back home directly. But someone in the rain sent a message, which made his expression change slightly. The second round of the Easter dueling festival was held as scheduled. 171 contestants from the 4th to 6th grade appeared one after another. Compared to the less famous 1st to 3rd grade students, there were a large number of celebrity contestants from the 4th to 6th grade. The most eye-catching one was the Baron of the Night, who relied on the Reedridge Black Dragon to gain a large number of fans. He was a 5th grade Knight Academy student. As for why the Knight Academy students had the nickname Baron, of course, it was because he was indeed a baron. He was conferred the title when he was in the 3rd grade. While Evernight Baron was a celebrity duelist, he was also a young hero who had protected his home during the calamity. Because of that, he was promoted from a knight to a baron who didn't have the right to inherit his title. He was also promoted as a typical example, so he became famous. It was a pity that Evernight Baron wasn't considered handsome, and he wasn't popular enough. Thus, even though the Reedridge Black Dragon and the Sky White Dragon were equally popular, but the Baron of the Night and the Silver Dragoness were slightly different in popularity. But without the Silver Dragoness, the Baron of the Night's popularity was enough to support the scene. As for the 6th grade celebrity contestants, most of the 6th grade students were preparing to graduate, and some were even no longer in the academy. At this time, they were not in the mood to participate in this kind of entertainment competition. In short, the audience was shocked to find that the Silver Dragoness did not go on stage, so they could only make do with the Baron of the Night. Of course, there were also many popular contestants among the other students. Their fans had specially come and pulled up banners that covered the entire area like a rolling dragon. The qualifier between the 4th and 6th grades had a completely different atmosphere from the 1st to 3rd grades. The fans of each school were directly shouting the names or nicknames of the celebrity contestants. The atmosphere was as intense as some historical concerts. Dake and the others were affected by the atmosphere and became more and more engrossed in watching. When the competition started and the magic guiding sprites appeared one after another, he suddenly thought that in this kind of chaotic battle, if some celebrity contestants' magic guiding sprites were suddenly attacked or deliberately killed, would it cause a riot? I wonder if there are any archmages with silenced cards in the various libraries. As expected of the senior students, powerful magic guiding sprites emerged one after another. It didn't take long for someone to summon a 3rd-tier magic elf despite being surrounded by wolves. That flame python that was more than 10 meters tall shot down a thick pillar of fire from the sky, sweeping across a large area. That archmage's points instantly skyrocketed and climbed to the top. However, in less than half a minute, That flame python was drowned by the waves of sure kill skills and was blasted to pieces amidst its screams. In the blink of an eye, the first place was replaced by another student's name. That was a name that no one had ever heard of. However, this name did not last for more than half a minute. The competition between the senior students was unimaginably intense. The first-tier magic guiding sprites had no room for survival at all. The contestants used all kinds of unimaginable methods to summon high-star magic guiding sprites and used all kinds of magic guiding cards and ritual cards to avoid the damage of group attacks. They constantly eliminated their opponents and then changed their magic guiding sprites to continue earning points. The rankings on the big screen went up and down like a train. The audience's shouts and screams rose and fell one after another due to the exciting performances of the duelists, creating a scene of a sea of people. When the Baron of the Night successfully summoned the third-tier magic guiding sprite, the Reedridge Black Dragon, the entire open-air arena's clamor reached its peak. This is the 9-star magic guiding sprite, the Reedridge Black Dragon? Dake raised his head to look at the Western Black Dragon with a crimson line on its back. He felt the faint dragon's aura that naturally emitted and finally had a preliminary understanding of this 9-star magic guiding sprite. To be able to cultivate a 9-star magic guiding sprite in the academy, it must have been a combination of strength and opportunity. Basically, the various low-star magic guiding sprites' transformation skills, low-level curses, and rituals would not have much effect on this Reedridge Black Dragon that had magic resistance. Moreover, it only needed a short cool-down dragon breath to burn the first-tier and second-tier magic guiding sprites to ashes. The same sure-kill skills in the hands of a high-star magic guiding sprite would be more powerful than those of a low-star magic guiding sprite. However, in the battle between the senior students, the 9-star magic guiding sprite, the Reedridge Black Dragon, was far from invincible. When the fans cheered because of the appearance of the Reedridge Black Dragon, they probably would not have thought that a huge, dragon-slaying sword would suddenly appear in the sky. The dragon-slaying sword that hung high in the sky relied on the powerful restraining effect against the dragon species to cut off half of the Reedridge Black Dragon's neck and cut it down from the sky to the ground. Immediately after, a dazzling white light suddenly erupted from the ground. A light prison that soared into the sky firmly locked the black dragon that landed on the ground. Through the gaps of the light prison, a divine spear of light fiercely pierced through, piercing this powerful and handsome black dragon until it was full of holes. Even if the Reedridge Black Dragon withstood the damage and relied on the Baron of the Night's magic guiding card to counterattack, its initial momentum had been completely shattered. Not long after, the Reedridge Black Dragon that became the target of public criticism was besieged and killed on the spot. The cries and curses of the audience mixed with the cheers and did not stop for a long time. It could only be said that the water of the senior students was too deep. In the end, the Baron of the Night actually fell to the mortal world in the battle of the qualifiers and barely made it through with the 8th place. This made the jaws of the commentator and the audience drop to the ground. The commentator for the senior students who spoke for the Baron of the Night at the beginning of the match wanted to drill into the ground. Fortunately, the format of the battle of the qualifiers was new. The spinach merchants were not sure about the odds and did not set up spinach gambling games. Otherwise, those greedy spinach fans would have jumped off a building because of this. Perhaps this is the essence of the battle of the qualifiers. The commentator's bitter laugh echoed in the air of the arena for a long time. After the 2 rounds of the qualifiers ended, there was still some excitement. There were people who praised wildly, and there were also people who cursed. Looking at the time, it was already close to 10 o'clock. Dake, Anna, and Luo C were talking and laughing as they passionately discussed the senior students' battle of the qualifiers. The atmosphere was quite good. However, as the senior students' battle of the qualifiers gradually left the stage, the senior who was in charge of hosting the qualifiers snapped her fingers handsomely. She lightly smiled at the magic loudspeaker and said, "The senior students' battle of the qualifiers ended with a relatively unexpected result, but there are still 8 contestants who successfully made it through. Okay, I won't joke around anymore. Now, let's invite the 16 contestants of the senior and junior groups onto the stage and give our blessings to the audience. It's time to go on stage." Anna squeezed Dake's waist and said mischievously. Dake helplessly smiled, Then he tidied his clothes and stood up. Then I'll go up. The arrangement of this segment was mostly announced in the waiting room. After the battle of the qualifiers ended, he directly went to the audience seats in the ring belt, so he did not know. Fortunately, he was there. When he arrived near the stage, he met the second-year senior, Mary Bond, and very naturally walked over to her. Among the contestants who made it through the qualifiers of the junior group, he was probably only familiar with senior Mike Owen. However, this senior sister Mary seemed to be a very easy person to get along with. Therefore, he was prepared to rub shoulders with her a little. Dake walked up to her and greeted first, "Hello, senior." Mary saw Dake walking over from afar and immediately nodded. "What's the matter? Is there something you want to ask?" Dake immediately laughed dryly and did not beat around the bush. "It's like this. I didn't go to the waiting room just now, so I wanted to ask what this segment of the stage is all about." Mary thought for a moment and said, "It's just a formality. After all, it's a formal competition. The audience needs to know who they are watching. When the time comes and they ask you, just say, 'Happy Easter,' and that's it." Dake thought for a moment and said, "Thank you, senior." Mary smiled. "It's fine. If I meet you in the main competition later, please go easy on me." Dake turned to the front. "How can I? When the time comes, senior, please don't go easy on me." Mary laughed and patted him heavily on the shoulder. Dake felt a wave of pain. What was going on these days? Why were girls so strong? Could a boy still be cured? The senior in charge of hosting was called Judy. She also called herself Judy when she hosted. Judy was probably the type who had a voluptuous figure but looked thin in clothes. She had light brown curly hair and her makeup was quite exquisite. A few strands of bangs floated down, and she was very charming. After all 16 contestants went on stage, Judy relied on her speaking skills to create the atmosphere. Then, she started introducing the first-place contestant in the senior group one by one. She did not need the contestants to speak. She spoke tirelessly and did not make them feel awkward at all. In the end, she handed the microphone to the contestant and asked him to say Easter blessings to the audience. Then, it was the next contestant's turn. Dake was not interested in the blessings, but he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to learn more about the seniors. These seniors were very likely to be his opponents in the duels in the future. It was always good to know more about them. The seniors' introductions were soon over. In the blink of an eye, it was the junior group's turn. Judy gave a simple introduction to the first-place contestant, Winnie Scarty. When she mentioned the Sage of Winter, it caused a big reaction in the audience. Then, Winnie stepped forward and casually said a series of blessings, which made the few contestants who had been perfunctory look away. The second-place contestant was Tom Nixon, a third-year student of the House of Fools. Tom, who was born in the slums, had black hair and black eyes. His bangs covered his face, and his face was a little thin. He was brought to the Shangmalian Academy by a third-year professor after he lost control of his magic and panicked. Every month, he would receive a special scholarship from the academy. Of course, he did not need money in the academy, so he sent it all to his family. He was a typical example of relying on his own hard work to make his family rich. A student with this kind of experience would of course have a good promotional value, but the academy did not do so. They only mentioned it during the duels. The third-place contestant was Stuart Phone from the House of Nobles. The fourth-place contestant was Mike Owen from the House of Nobles. The fifth-place contestant was Paul Dulles from the House of Knights. The top 5 contestants were all third years. There were students from 4 branches. The School of Magic was at the top, the House of Fools was well prepared, the House of Nobles had the most people, and the House of Knights was steady. The sixth-place contestant was Elsie Kevin, a second-year student from the House of Nobles. The seventh-place contestant was Dake Dimming from the House of Nobles. The eighth-place contestant was Mary Bond from the House of Nobles. If one counted carefully, one would find that a total of 5 students from the House of Nobles had successfully made it to the next round. The House of Nobles had a great advantage in the lower grades. Next. Dake was distracted for a moment, and Judy appeared in front of him. 3 in 160 100 plus. 6000/11,000. Chapter 385. Next, let's welcome the seventh contestant. Senior Sister Judy bowed slightly and nodded at Dake with a smile, revealing the white skin under her neck. Dake didn't look sideways, remaining calm and collected. Senior Sister Judy turned to the audience and introduced, "To be honest, before the results came out, I couldn't think of how a first-year student could compete for the right to advance while being surrounded by second and third years. But Dake Dimeng showed me this scene perfectly. I don't think the audience will ever forget the wonderful performance that he and his magic guide elf brought to us. Now, I'll do some brief introductions for him. To say that it was short, it was really short." Senior Sister Judy basically only recited the awards Dake had won since school started, and didn't mention his family background. Most of the time, a student's family background would help them on the road of life, but sometimes it would also bring them unnecessary trouble. The Academy obviously didn't want to bring those things into the competition. Originally, becoming an outstanding magister was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with or even surpass half of the nobles. So, the audience only needed to know that they were students of the Noble Academy. After the introduction, Senior Sister Judy turned around and blinked. "Student Dake Dimeng, do you have anything you want to say to everyone?" Dake nodded slightly, took a step forward, and took the microphone from Senior Sister Judy's hand. He looked at the tens of thousands of audience members in the audience and said, "Happy Easter." Then he returned the microphone to Senior Sister Judy. But when Senior Sister Judy grabbed the microphone, she also pressed her slender fingers against his, making it impossible for him to withdraw. Then Judy, who was supposed to turn to the next contestant, blinked hard and said, "Do you have anything else you want to say?" Dake was silent, and then his gaze drifted to Mary Bond beside him. But Mary's back was straight, and she didn't look sideways. Senior Sister Judy pushed the microphone back into Dake's hand and whispered, "It's your first time on the stage, so leave a deep impression on the audience." Dark adjusted his expression and said in a clear voice, "This year is the first Easter I've spent in the Academy, so I participated in the planning of this year's Easter Duel Festival. I hope that we can use the duel to bring smiles to more people." Then he handed the microphone back to Senior Sister Judy. Senior Sister Judy was stunned for a moment, but she quickly took the microphone and said, "I never thought that this year's Easter Duel Festival was planned by Student Dake. The qualifier battle royale really gave me a big surprise, and I really did feel joy from the duel. I think that everyone in the audience should feel the same. In that case, thank you, Dark Diamond, for bringing us such a wonderful and interesting duel." Instantly, thunderous applause. Regardless of whether Dake won more duels in the future, he had already left a deep impression on the audience. Especially when the Easter egg model became popular, he was afraid that more people would remember his name. That was completely unrelated to the Dimeng family, the son of a duke, and other family backgrounds. It was a personal impression of him, no matter if it was good or bad. After the applause stopped, Senior Sister Judy continued to introduce Mary Bond, who was in 8th place. Then Senior Sister Mary proved to Dake that what she said was true. All she said to the audience was, "Happy Revival." At this point, the introductions of the 16 qualified contestants stopped there. Senior Sister Judy waited for them to leave one by one before she began to explain the rules of the competition. Because the rules of the competition were too simple, there was no need to repeat them. Dake followed the seniors into the contestant passage, and then the 4th to 6th grade students continued to move forward, while the 1st to 3rd grade students stopped at the entrance. There were 8 contestants, 5 3rd grade students, 2 2nd grade students, and 1 1st grade student. However, the students of the same grade didn't seem to be familiar with each other. Even the 3rd grade students, Michael Owen and Stuart Phone, didn't have much to say to each other. As for Senior Sister Winnie Scardy, she took out a palm-sized book, leaned against the wall, and started reading. She was really racing against time, not stopping at all. Dake was actually quite curious about what she was reading. After all, a palm-sized book like this was generally not a serious book, but he suppressed his curiosity. In comparison, the 3rd grade student from the Night Academy seemed to be quite easy to talk to. However, Senior Sister Mary was indeed easier to talk to. Thus, Dake asked, "Senior sister, what do we do next?" "Wait." Senior sister Mary raised a finger and the corner of her mouth curled up. Dake continued to ask helplessly, "So what exactly do we have to wait for?" Mary smiled and said, "What else can we wait for? Wait for it to go on stage. Next, Judy will draw 2 number cards from the hidden box, and the 2 who are drawn will directly go up to duel. Starting with us, the lower grade group, that's why we're waiting here. I really hope that you and I will be drawn next. That way I can win easily." Dake's face darkened, and he said, "I hope so." Of course, he knew that Senior Sister Mary was joking. After understanding the situation, Dake could begin to estimate the time. In the qualifier battle, he only used 1 Pride 3 card, and it was used at the beginning. Up until now, the cooldown of almost an hour had obviously been reset. Then, all the magic cards in his hands were in a usable state. There are too few Great Sin cards, and it's indeed inconvenient. The interval between the early rounds is very long, so don't worry. However, when there aren't many contestants left, it'll be a little dangerous. He frowned slightly and couldn't help but think. Opposite him, Mike Owen actually wanted to greet him, but because of the presence of Stuart Phone, who was also a member of the Aristocratic History Research Society, it was really not convenient for him to get close to Dake. Mike Owen actually didn't care much about the Easter Duel Festival this time. The reason he participated in the competition was to relieve his boredom. However, he didn't expect that Angus Jeffreys still hadn't given up on finding trouble with Dake, which made it a little difficult for him. However, at this point, he could only adapt to the situation. Why don't I just lose? Mike Owen thought about it. As long as I lose fast enough, I don't have to worry about meeting him. Bingo! That's it. On the host stage, the host, Judy, didn't take out a black box with number cards as Mary said. She waved her hand behind her, and the staff behind the scenes immediately brought up a table. On the table were 8 neatly arranged Easter eggs. Judy smiled and came to the table. She picked up a small hammer from the table and said to the audience, "Next, I will choose 2 of these 8 Easter eggs, crack them, and take out the number cards inside. This will determine the 2 contestants of the first duel. Is everyone ready?" After giving the audience some time to react, Judy picked up the small hammer and shook it. She randomly picked an Easter egg and smashed it hard. Pa! From top to bottom, the egg was completely broken, revealing one of the large number plates. Judy picked up the number card and turned it to face the audience. She also turned in the direction of the contestant's passage. Number 129. Is actually me? Mike Owen instantly cheered up. Next, as long as he lost fast enough, he could change his profession to the audience and watch the competition in the ring. Maggie was still waiting for him downstairs. It's a pity that I couldn't hold back during the qualifier battle. Mike Owen continued to look at the host stage, waiting for Judy to crack the second Easter egg. Contestant number 129 is Mike Owen of the 3rd grade Noble House. It seems that he will be the first contestant of this competition. Next, let's continue to reveal the second contestant. Judy picked up the small hammer again and smashed it hard on an Easter egg in the corner. Pa! As the Easter egg shattered, she asked the audience, "So, who will be the next contestant?" "Let me see." This time, when she picked up the number card, Judy was obviously a little surprised. She turned her head and glanced at the entrance of the passage. Then, she suddenly raised her voice and said loudly, "For this Easter Duel Festival, the first match of the lower grade group will be between the 3rd grade Noble House's Mike Owen and the 1st grade Noble House's Dake Dimming. F***CK. In the contestant's passage." Mike Owen trembled and suddenly looked up at Dake opposite him. Almost at the same time, Dake also turned his head to look at him. Their eyes met. Dake was quite kind. Mike Owen heaved a sigh. He could already feel Stuart Phone's gloomy gaze. Is this the so-called, when it rains, it pours? Even if he didn't go all out in this duel, he wouldn't be able to gain anything. Unless he really didn't want to stay in the Noble History Research Society anymore. But with his past identity, when he was in the Noble History Research Society, He had offended almost all the large societies. Once he left the society, he would have nowhere to go. There's no other way, I can only bite the bullet. Mike Owen nodded at Dake and took the lead to walk out of the passage. At that time, his back was a little inexplicably heroic. Like a great general on an expedition. A small question mark appeared in Dake's mind. He was full of doubts about Mike Owen's actions. It's Easter, what kind of show are you putting on? Do you really think today is April Fool's Day? Oh, today is April Fool's Day, then it's fine. Dake tightened his collar and stepped toward the entrance of the passage. With the appearance of the two contestants one after another, the atmosphere in the audience rose again. Although Dake wasn't very popular, Mike Owen was surprisingly popular. The two contestants walked out of the passage and walked to the two sides of the arena under the guidance of the staff. Since Owen was the first contestant to be chosen, he was on the red side, and Dake was on the blue side. The audience's attention was also diverted because of the two contestants. Mike Owen had a lot of fans. But as far as the passers-by fans were concerned, they were obviously more inclined towards the planner of this duel festival. For most of the audience, it was a very happy thing to see the planner, who was supposed to be behind the scenes, step onto the stage of the duel. In short, many people gave a warm round of applause to the planner behind the scenes, a first-year student. Dake arrived at the bottom of the blue side's platform amidst the applause and stepped up the stairs. Speaking of which, this was only the second time he stepped on the stairs of the contestant platform, but his footsteps were quite familiar. There was no sense of awkwardness at all. When he stepped onto the contestant platform, he subconsciously turned his head to the seat where he saw Panduola last time. He was surprised to see her sitting quietly. Today, it seemed like the atmosphere around her was a lot more relaxed because she had two little fat pigs with her. There weren't many empty seats around her. When Panduola saw him turn his head, she raised her hand slightly to her chest and waved slightly. Dake couldn't help but smile. When he looked away, his smile widened. This was because he was lucky enough to see Yvette and Claire sitting in the front row of the audience. Dake was actually quite surprised by the arrival of his mother and teacher. He originally thought that an Easter competition like this wouldn't attract them, but now it seemed like that wasn't the case. Did they know that I would be going on stage? Or is it because of something else? Dake's mind was spinning as he raised his hand and waved at them. Yvette immediately responded excitedly. This time, the princess wasn't holding her hand, so she could finally wave to her heart's content. Seeing his mother's face again, Dake's heart felt warm. He still remembered that last time, his mother didn't give him any response, which made him feel disappointed for a long time. However, no matter how much he missed her, he couldn't show it on this stage. After Dake waved his hand, he turned around and looked at Senior Mike Owen, who was directly opposite him. He turned his attention back to the duel, raised his hand and pressed on the card table, and injected magic power. After the card table was activated, the loudspeaker was activated. Dake smiled and said, "Senior Owen, long time no see." Mike Owen wanted to chat with him, but the environment didn't allow it. So he just responded out of courtesy, "Long time no see, Dim. I didn't expect to meet you in the first match." Dake shrugged, "I also didn't expect to meet you in my first official match. I learned a lot from the last duel on the street. It's really a sore spot." Mike Owen covered his head and turned his gaze to somewhere in the ring. Angus Jeffrey had his hands clasped together, his fingers crossed, and was looking at him with a deep gaze. Mike Owen sighed in his heart. Then his face became serious and he adjusted his attitude. Then he said to Dake, "This is our second duel. I hope you can understand that the person in front of you is Mike Owen, a third-year student of the aristocrat's house." This was almost equivalent to an official declaration of war. Dake narrowed his eyes and said, "Senior, please do your best." After that, the two sides stopped talking. Dake took out the pre-adjusted card deck from his card pack. There were a total of 40 magic cards, and he felt a sense of weight when he held them in his hand. Today was different from the past. When he came to the contestant stage again, the strength of the card deck was very different. However, the duelist opposite him was no longer Elsie Kevin, a second-year student, but Mike Owen, a third-year honor student. In the street duel with plot people, Dake was the final winner. However, the sword hanging high, mud trap, triple bronze gate, and another armed card that Owen had shown at that time were all very powerful magic cards. If he had not put on a show at that time and had started by summoning the magic fairy, Dake might not have won so easily. There was no doubt that Mike Owen was the strongest duelist he had encountered so far. Facing an opponent of this level, Dake did not dare to relax in the slightest. What he said to Mike Owen to "do your best" was also a reminder to himself. Believe in your card deck. As Dake put the magic card into the card slot, the card table began to shuffle automatically. The contestants from both sides were ready. The referee's whistle was then heard. The commentator's words to liven up the atmosphere were also forgotten. The whole atmosphere gradually became serious. Preparation stage, 30s. The 30-second countdown for the preparation stage appeared at the same time on the card table panel and above the arena. Dake suddenly reached out to touch the card. After a moment of unfamiliarity, he immediately entered the zone because of the familiar texture of the magic card. This time, the duel was conducted in the most formal way. There was one thing that was not quite what Dake had expected. Perhaps it was to synchronize with the duel between the seniors so that the audience would not feel separated when the duels between the two groups took place in turns. Even the magic sphere of life enchantment of the junior group used the 4th level, 8,000 points of magic power. There was a relatively large difference in tempo between a duel with 8,000 points of magic power and a duel with 4,000 points of magic power. Dake had not even experienced a duel with 4,000 points of magic power. This time, it was a big leap, so he needed to treat it with a more cautious attitude to grasp the details. Draw cards. The 30-second countdown for the preparation stage included the 2 steps of drawing cards and thinking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 magic cards were in his hands. Dake handed the magic cards to his left hand and spread them out in a fan shape. His eyes quickly scanned them. Spell Cage, Little Devil Beast, Pride 3, Pride Eye, Meow Meow, Flicker Spell, Little Devil Beast and Pride 3. The moment he saw these 2 magic cards, Dake could not help but frown. The possibility of summoning the Devil Beast had been opened. However, when facing a third-year powerhouse, if he directly summoned the second-tier magic fairy, would he fall into a trap? The little demonic beasts were at the core of his tactical system. Whether it was the Devil Beast, the Heidi Road Beast, or the strongest Basti Beast, they all needed the little Devil Beast as the foundation. Once he chose to summon the Devil Beast, it was equivalent to giving up the Heidi Road Beast and the Basti Beast. If the Devil Beast fell into a trap again, then, should he summon Meow Meow? It doesn't make much sense. Hiding the head and showing the tail is not my style. Tick. The 30-second countdown passed in the blink of an eye. The duel switched to the battle stage. The same 30-second countdown appeared on the interface and above the arena. Dake instantly came back to his senses and directly summoned. In the name of Dake Dim-ing, I summon the Little Devil Beast. 11000/11,000 in January and February of 2021, first place on the monthly best-selling monthly votes list for both months, first place on the monthly recommendation votes list for this month. In March, work harder. Please vote, it's decided on you, Secretary Magician. Chapter 386. As the summoning ended, the light of summoning lit up in front of both contestants at almost the same time. Usually, the limit of summoning was 3 seconds. Obviously, both contestants had already reached the limit under normal conditions. This time, Mike Owen didn't put on a show. He started by summoning a rare human-type magical elf. The human type that appeared in the red team summoning area with one knee on the ground was a fully armored spearman. For this type of magical elf, the focus was usually on the strength of its armor. If it was a special armor, it would usually appear as a passive sure kill skill in the sure kill skill column. If it was just an ordinary armor that couldn't even compare to the defense of the main body, it wouldn't be recorded. The armor on Mike Owen's human elfin exuded a gloomy black light. Clearly, it was a special item. Card name, Serenity Guard. Type, Sprite Card, Memorize in 1 second. https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP level, ****, race, human. Attribute, normal. Magic power, 1100, attack, 1400, defense, 1400, sure kill skills, serenity armor, serenity spear, serenity armor, defense plus 300, serenity spear, attack plus 300. The core materials of the Serenity Guard series of magic cards basically came from the depths of the Shang-Malian underground city. It was very difficult to obtain them. Among the senior students, there were many duelists who used this series of magic cards. Mike Owen could be considered as one of the best. The Serenity Guard that he summoned with his hand was equipped with the Serenity Armor and Serenity Spear. Its magic power and defense were all higher than the top-notch magical elf of the first tier. If it was a normal duel, it would be hard to find a match in the first tier. When Mike Owen summoned the Serenity Guard, the commentator for this duel, Zach Wilson, started to explain it. Of course, he would not reveal the relevant information when the Serenity Guard was about to unleash its killing move. Therefore, being a commentator was also a technical job. He couldn't reveal too much information to interfere with the duel, but he also had to let the audience have a necessary understanding of the regular magic cards. Dake had heard of the Serenity series of magic cards, but didn't know much about them. But since he had a plan, he only glanced at the U-City Guard, and ordered the little demon beast that had just materialized, "Fly up, little demon beast." The little demonic beast's expression was solemn, and it immediately flew into the air after entering the arena. Its flying speed wasn't fast, but the Guard of Serenity didn't attack after it was summoned. Instead, it raised its spear and stood guard in front of the red magic conducting ball. After only 3 seconds of cooldown, both players immediately began their second summoning. Dake used Pride 3 without hesitation, and a dazzling black-gold radiance started to flash within the card. He raised Pride 3 high, but his eyes were fixed on Senior Owen. Mike Owen held a new magic card between his 2 fingers and held it vertically in front of his eyes. His gaze was unusually sharp, completely different from his usual cheerful self. Their gazes met in the air as if they had been electrocuted. Almost at the same time, the two suddenly shouted, "Swipe card, evolve. Armed, transform." In an instant, the Pride 3, in Dake's hand and the armed card in Owen's hand burst out with a strong glow at the same time. Under the radiance of Pride 3, the skull pattern between the eyebrows of the little demon beast quickly disappeared, and the crimson emblem of Pride lit up. The black gold light wrapped around it, causing its body to decompose and reassemble in the light. Evolve. Roar. With a violent and contemptuous aura, the fallen angel digital beast with crimson eyes roared into the arena. Its rotten and broken bat wings spread out angrily. The black clothes that clung tightly to its skin vividly displayed every strong muscle on its body. Its long arms that could stretch out freely hung naturally, and its huge and sharp demon claws were entwined with the dark power that symbolized death. To be able to appear as the first magic fairy in front of so many spectators, the excitement in the demon beast's heart was indescribable. It looked down at the God of Serenity, on the opposite side, and its death claws were already eager to try. But on the opposite side, although the God of Serenity, who was covered in armor and black light, was silent, it raised its head slightly, and the black light that seeped out from the gap of its helmet gave off an extremely gloomy aura. The liquid metal ball that descended from the sky hovered in front of the God of Serenity's chest. As it spun, spiderweb-like threads shot out and wrapped around the God of Serenity's armor. The moment the metal threads touched the armor, they merged into it, dyeing the originally pitch-black armor of Serenity into a bright silver color. Only a moment later, the entire armor had completed its transformation. Even the pitch-black spear had turned into a silver spear. The God of Serenity waved its silver spear and pointed at the sky, transforming into an existence that looked like a silver metal man. "It's a liquid metal armor." On the commentary platform, Wilson's eyes were filled with excitement as he suddenly raised his voice. Mike Owen's use of the armed card was outstanding among the third-year students, and this liquid metal armor was even more unique. By transforming the original armor into a liquid metal armor, it reduced the magic power requirement of the armor. The God of Serenity, who was born with a special armor, was the best carrier for this kind of armor. And the Guard of Serenity, who had completed the arm transformation, had a completely different aura. The spectators were obviously surprised by this transformation scene, and the cheers were louder and louder. Seeing the Guard of Serenity complete its transformation, Dake couldn't help but think of Mike Owen's arm transformation in the street duel. He couldn't help but be interested. His eyes focused, and he laughed softly. "Demon Beast, teleport." The moment he said that, the Demon Beast seemed to have predicted it in advance and instantly disappeared from the spot. Amidst the exclamations, the Demon Beast appeared directly behind the Guard of Serenity. The corners of its mouth curled up into a sinister smile, and the hands that it raised suddenly expanded. "Death claws. Defend." Mike Owen's voice sounded. Although it was raised in volume, it was still calm enough. The Guard of Serenity, who had transformed into a silver metal man, suddenly twisted its waist, and the silver spear swung in a huge arc, violently sweeping behind it. Between the death claws and the silver spear, the red magic conducting ball was floating in the air. Mike Owen had expected this. He put his index and middle fingers together, and as the magic power circulated, he suddenly pointed upwards, and the red magic conducting ball was pushed upwards. It suddenly felt a force and shot up like a rocket. A red light flashed in the Demon Beast's eyes. Seeing the magic conducting ball escape, the death claws, that had already been thrown out, continued forward without hesitation. One of its claws grabbed the silver spear head, and the other claw grabbed the Guard of Serenity's right shoulder. Everything happened in a split second. Amidst the loud noise, the Guard of Serenity's silver spear was firmly grabbed by the Demon Beast, and its right shoulder was violently torn apart. A deep roar came out of its helmet, and the hands that were holding the spear shone brightly with silver light. The metal surface of the spear wriggled like water, and it suddenly shot out. The Demon Beast was caught off guard, and the liquid metal shot all over its face. The metal stuck to its face as if it had a mind of its own, and it actually became a metal mask that stuck to its face. The metal mask that covered its eyes, nostrils, and mouth was firmly placed on the Demon Beast's face. The Demon Beast only felt its vision turn black, and its mouth and nose were blocked, unable to breathe. It was abnormally uncomfortable. It had never suffered such humiliation before, and it was about to go berserk. But in the next moment, its master's voice rang clearly in its ears. 10,000 death claws. That calm voice instantly calmed the Demon Beast that was blinded and suffocated. It didn't hesitate to follow Dake's instructions and released the 10,000 death claws in front of it. Thick darkness power gathered at its chest, forming a spinning energy whirlpool. Many death claws shot out from the whirlpool, striking the Guard of Serenity like a bunch of snakes. The Guard of Serenity wanted to dodge, but its silver spear was still grabbed by the Demon Beast. When it pulled out its spear, its movements couldn't help but slow down. "Abandon your spear." Even though Mike Owen's furious roar sounded out. However, multiple claws of death had already landed on its back. Boom, boom, boom. Several explosions sounded one after another. The Guard of Serenity's back was totally ripped apart. After transforming, its defense was further increased, but it still wasn't able to block the multiple death claws' critical strike. Its magic power, which was only 1,100 points, was almost depleted in an instant. Pang! The Guard of Serenity totally exploded. Magic power light scattered in the air. The cheers of the audience suddenly stopped. Mike Owen's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. Dida. The countdown for the turn sounded out softly. The players from both sides subconsciously reached out for their cards. The moment the two magic cards were in his hands, Mike Owen's eyes shone brightly. He immediately took out one of the magic cards and raised it up high. By Mike Owen's order, magic summoning, suspended sword. Along with the completion of the usual summoning spell. Suddenly, a strong wind blew in the sky, forming a giant sword in the air. Dake had already seen the power of this suspended sword. But Mike Owen didn't summon the magic fairy at this time and directly used this magic spell card. He was probably sure that the demon beast that lost its vision wouldn't be able to attack his magic conducting ball in a short period of time. Otherwise, during the summoning, even if the red magic conducting ball flew high into the sky, it wouldn't be able to escape the razor wings of the demon beast. His judgment was undoubtedly correct. Not only was the demon beast unable to aim, but the suffocating feeling after its mouth and nose were blocked also made it unable to move nimbly. It raised its hand and tried to grab the metal mask. But the liquid metal mask had already taken root on its face. Unless the entire face was torn off, it was impossible to take it off. And the pain of tearing the face. Magic fairies were less sensitive to pain, but it didn't mean they were willing to endure pain. The demon beast fell into hesitation. At this time, what it needed the most was still guidance. Dake didn't betray its trust. When it needed guidance, a voice rang in its ears through the connection of the magic card. Straight ahead, fly straight. So, the demon beast endured the suffocating feeling and opened its broken devil's wings. Its flying speed was still extremely fast. When Mike Owen's suspended sword brought up a strong wind that swept across the field, it had already flown back to the blue side summoning area. Stop. Orders were obeyed. The demon beast immediately stopped. The 30-second round countdown above the field was ticking steadily. The voice that stopped ringing in its ears made it realize something. Its face that was covered by the metal mask trembled slightly. Then, it suddenly turned around and crossed its arms in front of it, forming a cross. Almost at the same time, the howling wind had already rushed over. Hovering Sword was surrounded by a violent aura, and under Mike Owen's control, it was swung down from the top as if it was going to cut the whole arena in half. Boom! The ferocious wind blade tore the demon beast's skin. But the suspended sword that was slashing down was blocked by the demon beast's arms that were entwined with the power of darkness. The blue magic ball that was protected behind the demon beast was only affected by the wind and swayed slightly. Although Mike Owen's suspended sword was imposing, the demon beast was a well-rounded warrior with both magic attack and defense of 2000. Although its magic power was reduced because of this, it still withstood the slash of this giant sword. After swinging this sword, the magic power stored in suspended sword was exhausted, leaving only a shadow floating in the air. The demon beast's cheeks barely twitched outside the metal mask. It was smiling. At this moment it was very clear that it had perfectly fulfilled its master's expectations. It was also clear. It was almost time. Using Demon Beast as a sacrifice to summon Diru Beast. But why would the magic fairy summoned by using it as a sacrifice be that annoying stinky cat? Damn it! Pot, in its rage, the demon beast that still had more than 50% of its magic power turned into light on the spot. The light that rushed up blended with the white light that shot out from the Diru Beast's magic card, forming a mysterious and complicated sacrificial summoning array. Inheriting the demon beast's unfulfilled wish, the incarnation of pride and light, Diru Beast, made its appearance. The Diru Beast that emerged from the sacrificial summoning array raised its head slightly as if it saw the little demon beast's soul gradually rising to the sky and drifting to the distance. It moved its hands without any nostalgia and slowly warmed up. There were still 4 magic cards in Dake's hands at this time. Pride Eye, Meow Meow, Blink Spell, Single Scabbard, 4000 slash, Update tomorrow morning or noon, Fuel Injection. Chapter 387. Sacrificial summoning was much more difficult than normal summoning. Dake didn't have much time to practice recently, so he could only reduce the duration of the sacrificial summoning to about 9 seconds. 3 seconds of normal summoning. 9 seconds of sacrificial summoning. This was the result of Dake's learning. After using the sacrificial summoning to summon the Diru Beast, the summoning went into cooldown. Dake used this time to carefully observe Mike Owen's reaction. Even though Hovering Sword didn't work, Mike Owen wasn't disappointed at all. It was as if he didn't expect Hanging Sword to have any results from the beginning. When Kieran controlled Hovering Sword to slash down from above, he had already taken out the next card. A magic-conducting spirit that was born in the wind appeared in the air just 2 meters away from the red team's platform. Website: https://m. Vipkanshu. VIP. It was a special magic-conducting spirit that could only be special summoned in an environment full of wind elements. Card name: Stormblade. Type: Spirit card. Level: Race: Elemental. Attribute: Flight. Magic power: 1800. Attack: 2300. Defense: 1400. Ultimate skills: Eye of the Wind Element, Stormblade, Eye of the Wind Element. When the concentration of wind elements is high enough, a magic-conducting spirit with the Eye of the Wind Element can be summoned without any sacrifice. Stormblade. The wind is like a blade that revolves around the body. When resisting a strong enemy, it can also turn into a storm to destroy everything. It's Stormblade. On the commentary platform, Zach Wilson was shocked. He clearly remembered that Mike Owen used a wind elemental magic conducting spirit. It should be a 4-star magic conducting spirit called Eye of the Storm. However, as a commentator, he couldn't stop now. He immediately said, "It's only the second round, and Mike Owen has summoned a 5-star magic elf Storm's Blade, without using any sacrifice. Although contestant Diamond has also summoned a second-tier magic elf, it's only a 4-star Diru Beast. Can it fight against the powerful wind element?" While his voice was still echoing in the air, the 2 magic guide fairies in the dueling ground were already facing each other. Although Stormblade was a 5-star magic guide fairy, its 3 measurements were actually not that high. What made it so popular among 5-star magic guide fairies were its sure-kill skills, Eye of the Wind Elemental, and Stormblade. Eye of the Wind Elemental made it easier to summon. Storm of Blades gave it both offensive and defensive capabilities. Storm's Blade was a humanoid magic guide fairy. It was only 1.34 meters tall, and its entire body was transparent. There was a slight breeze circulating within its body. A green cape was draped over its shoulders, making it look like a small hero. When it was born from the wind element left behind by a high-hanging sword, it reached out its hands and dove down. The wind blades circling around it instantly turned it into a terrifying killing machine. Meanwhile, in the blue team's summoning area, the Diru Beast standing in front of the blue magic guide ball only raised its head slightly. A red light burst out from its eyes and fiercely shone on the Storm's Blade that was diving down. Although the Diru Beast, which was good at close combat, had an advantage in its 3 measurements, it was still very inconvenient to deal with this opponent that was covered in thorns. Thus, using Cat's Eyes to make it so chaotic that it couldn't control the wind elements around it was the best choice. It succeeded without a doubt. When Storm's Blade was 3 meters away from it, it suddenly lost control, and the wind blades around it shot out crazily. The Diru Beast raised its eyebrows, shrank its body, and slid backward. It grabbed the magic guide ball and ran to the edge of the arena like the wind. The wind blades followed closely behind its footsteps and landed on the ground with a swish 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 sound. It made a final dash and avoided all the wind blades. When it raised its head again, there was no longer any wind around Storm's Blade's body. Storm's Blade, which was in everyone's line of sight, had a confused expression after waking up. It flew in the air, its cloak fluttering, and its hands spread out in a daze. The Diru Beast seemed to have sensed something. It raised its hand, and a sheathed long sword emitting a holy aura fell from the sky and landed in its palm. Sword come. When the Diru Beast held the sword in its hand, its aura was completely different. It threw the blue magic guide ball up. Its upper body suddenly leaned forward, and its hind legs exerted force, shooting out like an arrow of light. While it was rushing, it held the sword in its right hand and grabbed the sheath in its left hand. With a clang, it pulled out the sheath. Half of the sword was exposed, flashing with a cold light. Storm's Blade dodge. Mike Owen, who had already seen the power of the single sword sheath in the qualifier, hurriedly roared. It had only been a minute since the duel started, but Mike Owen had already thrown away all the worries he had before the start of the duel. His entire body and mind were thrown into the intense and exciting duel. Tick. When the 30 seconds countdown of the third round began, Dake calmly drew his card, but Mike Owen didn't seem to notice that he was staring at the duel field. The duel between the Magus was very unpredictable. 1 second the victory was in the grasp, but the next second it was very likely to be like a candle in the wind. Storm's Blade, without the same name as Storm's Blade, the activation speed of Storm's Blade was obviously slower. Not to mention, it had just woken up from the chaotic state, so its reaction was inevitably delayed. When it tried to respond to the Magus expectation, there was already a flash of light in its vision. The Diru beast leaped up, and the moment it got close, it pulled out its sword. The sword light was like water, pure and bright, and the Storm's Blade was instantly cut in half. The characteristics of the wind elementals made them almost immune to physical attacks, but what it was facing now was a holy sword that ignored the change in ability and had the characteristic of a sure hit. After equipping the single sword sheath, the Diru beast's standard attack power had reached 3,600 points. With just one sword, its body was scattered. The light spots of magic power floated up like fireflies. The Diru beast stepped on the ground with 1 foot to alleviate the impact. After 2 steps, it returned its sword to the sheath. It slightly raised its head and directly looked at the red magic ball in the air. A trace of sharpness flashed in its eyes. The Diru beast's extreme performance made the commentator Wilson shut his mouth. On the other hand, Mike Owen, who was on the red team's platform, was a seasoned third-year student. After he confirmed that Storm's Blade could not be saved, he immediately calmed down and reached for his card. He still had 3 magic cards in his hand. These 3 magic cards were not useless, but it was not the time to use them. If these 2 magic cards in the third round could make up for the lack of power, there would still be a chance to turn things around. The duel between Magus was like this. Until the last moment, no one could say who would win or lose. Mike Owen took a deep breath and was about to look at the 2 magic cards that he had just drawn. But suddenly, his gaze froze. From the corner of his vision, he suddenly saw that the Diru beast below was in a throwing posture. After the Diru beast put the sword back into the sheath, it actually threw the sword together with the sheath at the magic ball that was flying in the air. At that moment, Mike Owen's fastest reaction made a sudden change. He decisively gave up looking at the magic cards. With a burst of magic from his fingertips, he immediately used the method of remotely controlling the magic ball to move the red magic ball up. At this time, the single scabbard had already been thrown out. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Mike Owen poured all his magic into the magic ball and the magic ball instantly deviated. The single scabbard flew by a hair's breadth. Mike Owen felt the sacred aura of the single scabbard at close range. He only felt that if he was a moment slower, the magic value of the life enchantment, as high as 8,000, would not be able to block the attack. This illusion made him sweat at the back of his head. But fortunately, this kind of throwing attack was completely in a straight line. Once the magic ball dodged the direct hit, it would no longer be a threat. Phew, at this time, the magic on his fingertips was feedback. Mike Owen finally knew the type of the 2 new magic cards. Then, joy surged in the depths of his eyes. However, just as this joy rose, it suddenly turned into shock. Like a roller coaster, Mike Owen's emotions went up and down. But he was not the only one who was shocked. That is, at this moment, the commentator Wilson's voice had changed. More than half of the audience exclaimed. There was an atmosphere full of surprise in the duel hall. Even the Valkyrie Arvet and the Sun Warrior Montifili couldn't control their surprise. Under the gaze of countless people, the mysterious sword in everyone's eyes, the single eye in the sword body opened instantly. The ribbon at the end of the sword hilt stretched and widened and turned into an arm. It grabbed the scabbard with the fingers of the ribbon and pulled itself out of the scabbard. Then, it shot out like lightning and slashed the red magic ball that had stopped in the air without any hesitation. This time, Mike Owen didn't have time to control the magic ball. Even if he did, it was impossible to make the magic ball move faster than a 4-star magic elf that could fly. The life enchantment outside the magic conducting ball was suddenly split open by this unexpected slash. Crack. The glass-like life enchantment shattered outward with the slash as the center. The magic value of the life enchantment dropped from 8,000 points to less than 6,000 points in an instant. 6,000 points of mana was more than enough under normal circumstances. Mike Owen realized that he still had room to maneuver. He immediately released his magic power and controlled the magic ball to rush upward, trying to get rid of the equipment card that had somehow come to life. However, after the first slash hit the single scabbard, it didn't stop at all. It turned around and slashed the second time. The original basic attack of 2,200 points was increased by 50% due to the effect of combo slash. It became 3,300 points when the sword slashed out. With this slash, the life enchantment of the magic ball seemed to have exploded. Magic fragments scattered everywhere, and its magic value dropped from 5,901 points to 2,621 points in the blink of an eye. Rise. After the second slash, the single scabbard's aura became even more ferocious. It was as if there were air currents swirling around its body. Mike Owen's face flushed red, and his magic power exploded to the limit. The magic ball finally shot upward at an explosive speed, distancing itself from the single scabbard that had an astonishing aura. However, the single scabbard's aura didn't drop. It turned around and followed up, thrusting the third time. Mike Owen instinctively felt that the magic ball's remaining 2,621 points of magic value wasn't enough to withstand the third slash. He increased the amount of magic power he injected and pointed forward. The magic ball turned at a right angle and shot toward the blue team's contestant platform. After this shot, he stopped controlling the magic ball without hesitation. He pressed his hand on one of the magic cards and chanted, "Normal summon." Continuing to control the magic ball to dodge was a sure way to die. Once Dake used magic power to interfere with his magic ball, the single scabbard would catch up with him in the blink of an eye. He would have no way to turn the tables. Therefore, he could only bet his last hope on the magic card in his hand. Moreover, it had to be a magic card that could be summoned within 3 seconds. In the name of Mike Owen, magic summoning, triple green mantis. Flicker incantation. Dake, who had started chanting earlier than Mike Owen, activated the incantation card, Flicker incantation, with a speed that was 1 second slower than Mike Owen. It was a basic incantation that could allow a magus or a magic fairy that he had personally refined to move 1 to 3 meters forward in an instant. The distance between the single scabbard and the red magic ball was shortened by 3 meters in an instant. This 3-meter distance was the last straw that broke the camel's back at this critical moment. Before Mike Owen's triple green mantis gate could be erected, the single scabbard's third slash had already landed on the red magic ball's life enchantment. Crack. After the red magic ball's life enchantment withstood the last slash of the 3 consecutive slashes, the remaining 2,621 points of magic power instantly emptied. The transparent life enchantment shattered in the wind and disappeared completely. 26210. After a full half a minute, Zach Wilson's voice suddenly rose. The match is over. The winner of this duel is the first-year aristocrat, Dake Dimming. In the ring, Angus Jeffrey's hands were clasped together and his fingers were crossed. There was a sinister look in his eyes. Next to him, Stuart Phone had unknowingly arrived at the ring's spectator stand. 1.5 minutes. Only 3 rounds have passed since the start of the battle. Stuart Phone's low voice reached Jeffrey's ears like the low hum of locusts. Owen, you've tried your best. Angus Jeffrey took a deep breath and sat up straight. The sinister look in his eyes disappeared without a trace as he sat up straight. Instead, he revealed an open-minded smile. Then, in the spectator stand behind the ring, a torrent of cheers sounded like a surging tide. No one would have thought that the first match of the Easter Duel Festival, the third year versus the first year, which should have had no suspense, would be so exciting and intense. Who can tell me the name of that cat? 2 in 1 4100 plus. 8000/8000. My head hurts a little. I'll take a break. Same as usual tonight. Chapter 388. Although many of the professors and senior students could see that the single sword scabbard had changed from an equipment card to a magic elf card. The knowledge of the audience was still a bit shallow. They didn't understand the nature of magic, and most of them thought that the Dilu beast was controlling the single sword scabbard. It was already very difficult for a magus to control a magic ball from a distance, and there were many restrictions. This magic elf could control a flying sword so freely. This was very terrifying and inconceivable in the eyes of ordinary people. If there was such a technique, so what if one could take a person's head from 1,000 miles away? The legendary Brave Brett's sword technique was also not far off. This kind of astonishment, coupled with the fact that the first-year student had only used 3 rounds to defeat the popular third-year contestant, caused a tsunami of cheers to erupt. Just this 1.5 minutes was enough to leave a deep impression on the first-year student. Among them, the Grade 1 Magic Guide sprite, Diru Beast, and that unknown sword left the deepest impression on everyone. And for those who understood this kind of knowledge and knew that there was indeed a weapon card or armed card that could transform into a magic elf, they were even more shocked. If they understood a little more deeply. Remember the website, Vipkanshu. VIP to be able to see that the single sword scabbard was a holy sword, then it was shocking. Yvette's expression finally changed. Originally, she accepted the matter of her baby being able to refine a holy sword with a pure and happy attitude. Even when she found out that the lion beast had the brave aptitude, she wasn't too surprised. But in this duel, from the moment the Dilu beast held the holy sword, her expression changed. The Dilu beast's brave aptitude was restrained and deep. Before it came into contact with the holy sword, it had not been revealed at all. Therefore, although Yvette liked this magic elf, she didn't think that it also had the brave aptitude. However, once the Dilu beast came into contact with the holy sword, the brave aptitude, that was even stronger than the lion beast, was completely exposed. It actually has 2 brave aptitude. And that holy sword. Yvette couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Although the number of holy swords was not as many as the stars, it was not a small number either. Every sacred sword was different in some subtle ways. The resulting difference in quality was also very obvious. Over a long period of time, there had also been products such as forged holy swords. Even hero candidates with enough hero quality could directly use the holy sword incantation to summon the holy sword. But judging from its current performance, the holy sword magic card that her family's baby had made would probably be among the best among all the holy swords. High-grade holy sword and double hero. It was inevitable that people would associate it with the word fate. Even if Yvette wasn't a believer in the theory of fate. But he couldn't help but worry about it. She didn't want Dake to fall into the mud of the future because of this. As a saint, she had a long lifespan and could provide protection for her child for a lifetime. That was why she had let her child do whatever he wanted. Because no matter what the child did, she would be able to cover for him. Moreover, she had always believed that her baby wasn't a bad person. She was just a little mischievous and willful. But if she fell into the vortex of fate called hero, because of this, Yvette couldn't help but think of Brett God's sacrifice. That wasn't what she had expected. Looks like I have to do something. She held the model of the Diru beast in her hand, and her expression gradually became serious. In the Freedom City, City Lord Montefiore also noticed the hero quality of the Diru beast. She was even more shocked than Yvette. Compared to the lion beast with the fighting attribute, the Diru beast with the light attribute was undoubtedly more in line with people's common understanding of the hero. Since ancient times, the true hero had undoubtedly had a heart towards the light. But what made her even more shocked was the holy sword. What exactly is that holy sword? If the holy sword could move on its own, would there be any hero? City Lord Montefiore suddenly turned to Aertii and questioned, Aertii, do you really understand your student? Aertii's smile was as calm as ever. Suna, I wouldn't pry into a student's secrets. No wonder the demon race was able to infiltrate the academy during the war. City Lord Montefiore cursed in her heart, but she didn't say it out loud. The existence of the Shang Malian Academy had an extraordinary meaning. As the principal, Aerti was the chosen one, and also the one who had to bear the responsibility. In other words, if she didn't have such strong principles, she wouldn't have been the principal of the Shang Malian Academy. City Lord Montefiore knew that she couldn't get more information from Aerti. She could only turn to her daughter, hoping to give her some advice. But Aurora turned to face her first and said softly, "Mother, is this the Dake dimming?" City Lord Montefiore's voice suddenly stopped. She couldn't say anything for a while. The first duel of the competition ended too quickly. Judy, who was in charge of hosting, had just sat down to watch the duel, but she had to stand up and walk to the stage again. Next, she would interview the winner of this duel, Dake Dimming. Dake was still backstage at the moment. After he confirmed that he had won, he began to pack up the magic cards. But in this duel, he only used a total of 5 magic cards, so it only took a moment to pack up. He condensed magic at his fingertips and teased the Dilu beast in the card face. When the Dilu beast couldn't stand it anymore and turned its butt to him, he smiled and put all the cards into the card pack. At this time, Mike Owen on the opposite side had also finished packing up. Dake looked up at him and found that although Senior Owen was quite excited at the moment of the duel, he quickly returned to normal after the duel. He didn't have much contact with Mike Owen, so he didn't have a bad impression of him. At most, he thought that he was quite interesting. After these 3 rounds of duel, he found that Senior Owen's strength might be a little stronger than he thought. The combination of Suspended Sword and Storm Blade had indeed stunned him. If it wasn't for his good luck and Senior Owen's lack of understanding of Single Scabbard, he really couldn't say whether he could win. After meeting Mike Owen's eyes, Dake put his hand on the table and said, "Thanks for letting me win." Then, he closed the table. Mike Owen nodded at him with a serious expression, then turned around and walked down the platform. Although he lost, when he walked down the stairs, his footsteps were surprisingly light. Of course, he couldn't let others see it. This all-out defeat might be a good thing for him. It's April, almost half of this semester has passed. It's time to prepare for the final exam and relax. Dake walked down the stage. The staff member in charge of leading the way was already waiting at the stairs. The two looked at each other and nodded. The staff member said in a serious tone, "Next is the winner's interview. Judy will choose 3 questions to ask you. You can choose to answer, so don't be too cautious." Dake paused for a moment before he smiled and said, "Thank you, Senior, I'll do my best." The staff member patted his shoulder and smiled, "Good luck, I have high hopes for you." Dake nodded and said, "Thank you." Then, he turned around and walked to the stage. But when he turned around, he saw that there was a model hanging on the senior's waist. Wait, isn't that a Dilu beast? Dake's brain turned. His sharp business sense made him realize where the problem was. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Senior, don't tell me you think that the Dilu beast model is going to increase in price?" Although the Dilu beast's performance was quite good. Dake shook his head and continued to walk. Not long after, he stepped onto the stage. The host, Senior Judy, was already waiting for him on the stage. She said to the audience that had quieted down, "Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this duel is on stage, first-year Noble student, Dake Dimming. I know that everyone is very curious about him. According to the usual practice, I will choose 3 questions to ask him to satisfy everyone's expectations." After speaking, Judy moved aside and waved at Dake. "Dimming classmate, please come over here." Dake came to the center of the stage. Judy's figure belonged to the rather tall type. She was more than 1.7 meters even without shoes. Dake didn't look very tall standing next to her. However, the contrast between people wasn't something that could be judged by height alone. When the two of them stood there, almost everyone's attention was focused on Dake. Judy could only serve as a foil next to him. After waiting for a while, Judy pretended to take out a small piece of paper and read it aloud. Then, the first question. "Dake Dimming classmate, are you really the planner of this Easter Duel Festival?" When this question was asked, there was a movement in the audience. But Dake looked around and smiled. "You can't say that. I only participated in the planning of this Easter Duel Festival. Judy's eyes turned and asked, "Then, what is the participation rate?" Dake turned his head and said, "Excuse me, is this the second question?" Judy was stunned. She covered her mouth and chuckled, "Yes. That's good." Dake turned to the audience. "If you want to talk about participation rate, it's about 999,999%. After a series of nines appeared, the originally surprised audience suddenly had a feeling that this was a joke. Some people thought about it and felt that it was true. A first-year student participating in the planning of this kind of large-scale competition was already very good. How could he be the planner? But they didn't expect this handsome first-year student to be so humorous. But on the stage, Judy's expression froze. She didn't know how to ask the next question. Dake looked at her and took the microphone. "Although the actual situation is different, it's about this much." Then, he put the microphone back in Judy's hand and placed his hands in front of his stomach. He bowed slightly to the audience and took 2 steps back. Then, he turned around and walked off the stage elegantly. At this time, Judy suddenly realized that Dake Dimming only answered one question from beginning to end. Her mouth twitched, but she couldn't do it on stage. She could only continue to smile and face the audience. While Judy was busy dealing with the audience, Dake Diming's expression changed slightly as he walked off the stage with his back facing the audience. He quickened his pace as soon as he walked off the stage. In the next round, 2 players from the upper year group would be selected to face off against each other. Then, it would be the lower year group's turn. The 2 groups would cross each other. After the 8-4 matches, they would enter the second round of the competition. And the first round of the competition wouldn't be completed in one go. Generally speaking, there would be a total of 4 matches. The upper and lower year groups would have 2 matches each. Then, there would be a lunch break. There would be a break of about 1 to 2 hours for the audience to eat in the branch library. During this time, the Academy also prepared some programs, but most of them were elegant music performances. At most, they would use some magic projection for rendering. After 1 to 2 hours, the main competition would continue until the winner was decided. Therefore, Dake had a lot of time before the next round began. He entered the contestant passage from the back of the stage, then turned into the fork and quickly walked to the ring. But he didn't go directly to Luo C and Deanna, nor did he go to talk to Panduola. Instead, he went straight to a position on the stage that he had locked onto. But a few minutes later, when he finally squeezed into that seat, he found that the woman with long orange hair who was supposed to be sitting there had already disappeared. He couldn't help but frown. He simply sat down in that position. But of course, the woman who had already slipped away would not return. A little further away, Professor Mitya Bartholomew was sitting with the rest of the professors. Beside her was Professor Sylph. Mitya was dressed as usual, but she was ordered to put on a coat. While complaining about Professor Shi Erfu's conservative attitude, she also put on a coat to cover her fierce body. Based on her temperament, it was impossible for her to take the initiative to get together with this group of rigid professors. But Professor Sarah Shi Erfu knocked on her dorm room door early in the morning and issued an invitation that she couldn't refuse. Professor Shi Erfu was the professor she was most familiar with in this academy. She had no reason to refuse her invitation, especially when Professor Shi Erfu looked at her with a very familiar teasing expression. So, Midya had no choice but to accept Shi Erfu's invitation and obediently sit there. The pain of not being able to eat melons really made her restless. 2 in 1, 4000/. During the 2 sessions, the website is XX. No comments allowed. No comments. It feels like no one is reading it. I feel lost. Let's not talk about it anymore. Give us some feedback by voting and giving us free items every day. Full subscription group 754102538. Chapter 389. The audience's reaction did not affect the entire competition. The Easter Duel Festival was still in full swing. Leah Goethe, who had to leave her original seat, was now strolling among the crowd. She really did not expect Dake Dimming to find her among so many students, but they did meet each other's eyes just now. So what if she was found? She just needed to leave. She did not care too much. Compared to Dake Dimeng, she was more concerned about Dake's two magical spirits, Lion Beast and Diru Beast, as well as the Holy Sword. Among the people present, there were not many who could determine that the single scabbard belonged to the Holy Sword. Lia Goethe happened to be one of them. While she was thinking about how Dake made these 3 magical cards, she pinched the skin on her face a few times to make herself look less like herself. For a grand magus, there were many ways to disguise and change one's appearance. Remember, https://m Vipkanchu. VIP she had only used the simplest of them. The slanted sunlight shone on her body. Her orange-red hair seemed to have absorbed the light and became redder. Dake Dimeng sat in Lia Goethe's original seat for a while before he finally got up and left. He did not return to Luo Si and Di Anna's side. After all, there were only 2 seats, and he could not always squeeze with the 2 little girls. So he thought about it and walked towards Pan Duola's seat. He noticed that there was an empty seat next to Pan Duola. When he found Pan Duola Doragon, the staff behind the scenes was moving a second table full of Easter eggs onto the stage. After that, Judy used a small hammer to crack open 2 eggs and chose the first 2 seniors to go on stage. When the 2 numbers were picked one after another, Dake walked to Pan Duola's side and bowed. "Can I sit down?" Pan Duola turned around in surprise. He raised his head slightly and smiled. Of course. Under the surprised gazes of the surrounding students, Dake sat down beside Pan Duola. Then, he subconsciously reached out to Pan Duola's arms and grabbed the soft part of one of the little fat pigs. Meow, the genuine dragon-shaped cat plant, took the initiative to rub against Dake's finger. Dake couldn't help but narrow his eyes and pinch twice more. Even though the catgrass and foxgrass at home were very cute. But how could domestic flowers be as fragrant as wild flowers? Dake Dimeng. Cough cough. When the atmosphere calmed down a little, Pan Duola asked curiously, "Can that sword of yours freely transform between a weapon and a magic elf?" Dake nodded. "That's right. Haven't you seen it before?" Pan Duola shook his head. "I've seen it before, but I didn't expect you to be able to refine it so early. This type of magic elf can be specially summoned in the form of a weapon card. It's very rare and expensive." Dake chuckled and took off the card bag from the side of his leg. He began to inject magic into each of the magic elf cards one by one to replenish it. The 2 selected seniors on the field had already walked out of the contestants' passage. Dake looked at them and had a deep impression of one of the seniors. "Is it the senior who uses the dragon-slaying sword?" "Luke Beige, a 5th-year student," Pan Duola said softly. "He's a strong opponent." Dake said, "I can see that." Pan Duola nodded and said, "The dragon race is born to be supreme. Dragons restrain each other. The dragon-slaying sword is actually made with dragon-type materials as part of the core." Dake was slightly surprised. "Is that so?" Pan Duola smiled. "It's not a secret. By the way, was this Easter Duel Festival really planned by you? I'm talking about the model Easter egg." Dake responded with a smile. "You could say that." Pan Duola winked at him. Then, she took out 2 models from the small bag beside her and shook them in front of him. Dake took a closer look and rubbed his eyes subconsciously. He thought that he was hallucinating. Instead, he saw 2 snow-white magic elf models lying in her fair and smooth palm. One of them was a cute cat. It was the model of the Diru Beast. The other one was the sky-white dragon, which only had 3 of them. Dake couldn't help but ask, "Senior, how many Easter eggs did you buy?" Pan Duola's lips curled up. She said with a hint of pride, "3. 3. Dake suddenly felt uncomfortable. He asked subconsciously, "What about the other egg?" Pan Duola carefully put the 2 models in her hands back. Then, she took out the 3rd egg. She handed the egg to Dake and smiled. "I bought 3 at once. I didn't expect the second one to have a white dragon. Do you want to try the 3rd one?" Dark took the goose egg-sized colored egg from her hands without any hesitation. After staring at it for a long time, he suddenly asked, "If I were to get an A-ranked magic guide fairy from this colored egg, would I be lucky, or would senior sister be lucky?" Panduola's eyelashes trembled. Her crystal-clear lips opened and closed slightly. She said, "Of course I'll be lucky. After all, I was the one who bought the Easter egg." Dake asked again, "Then what if I get an E-ranked magic elf?" Panduola said matter-of-factly, "Of course you'll be unlucky. After all, you can only get the worst Easter egg I bought." Dake. After a while, he looked at the Easter egg in his hands seriously. He was thinking about whether to summon the little devil beast. So far, he had relied on the little devil beast's great luck to successfully open a C-ranked giant monster model and an A-ranked pure white dragon maiden model. Then, he bought a little devil beast model from a senior that she didn't want. To be honest, compared to the D-ranked Diru beast and A-ranked sky white dragon model that Panduola opened, the value of the sky white dragon model wasn't low. It was just that the pure white dragon maiden was slightly less valuable than the sky white dragon model. The sky white dragon model could be said to be beyond A-ranked. Speaking of which, I also bought a few model Easter eggs, but I didn't open them myself. Dake placed his hand on the top of the Easter egg and said softly. Panduola smiled and asked, "Isn't that your first time?" Dake smiled. "That's right." As he spoke, he exerted force with his finger and pressed it in with a pa sound, breaking through the shell. Next, he wasn't in a hurry. He slowly opened the eggshell around it. When the eggshell was open to a certain extent, he inserted his finger and pinched out the model inside. "Looks like my luck isn't bad." Dake picked up the model and waved it at Panduola Sr. Under the sunlight, the model emitted a faint white light. It opened its eyes as if it had just been born. The blue cat's eyes seemed to have spirituality. The white cat, which was supposed to be a model, suddenly licked Dake's finger. Dake's mind moved, and he was pleasantly surprised. It's actually a magic guide model that can move. This magic guide sprite was also a Diru beast. Not bad at all. Panduola looked at the model in Dake's hand and suddenly took out another Diru beast model from her bag. Then, she stuffed the ordinary model that couldn't move into Dake's palm. Then, she took the moving magic guide model and smiled sweetly. "Okay, it's mine now, Dake." Since he got a Diru beast model for free, Dake obviously wouldn't have any objections. He held the ordinary Diru beast model and hesitated. "Then I'll accept it?" Panduola, "You're not going to say thank you?" Dake, "Thank you." Panduola, "Good." While Dake was opening the egg, the two senior contestants had already gone up the stage. The red team contestant was Luke Beige, who had the dragon-slaying sword. The blue team contestant was a senior that Dake didn't have much of an impression of. Even though Judy once gave a simple introduction to each contestant on stage, Dake didn't have a recorder. However, Doc wasn't a tape recorder, so those who didn't care about it didn't bother to record it. However, Pandora clearly had some understanding of them. She casually recited the information of the two contestants as if she was very familiar with them. Luke Becky vs. Ellery Clarissa. Dragon-slaying warrior vs. Fairy princess. 5th grade versus 4th grade. Luke Beige is a 5th grade student in the House of Fools. For a period of time, he was a strong opponent of Noah Sharp, who was also a 5th grade Baron of the Night. As a result, he received the title Dragon-slaying warrior. Ellery Clarissa is a 4th grade student in the House of Nobles. She has a noble status and is of royal blood. I thought you would at least know her. Luke Beige has a lot of cards. He's best at the dragon-slaying sword deck. Ellery Clarissa is a magic guide elf who specializes in fairies. She's a very troublesome person. To a certain extent, fairies countered dragons. On the surface, whether it was Beige or Clarissa, it was obvious that they were targeting dragons. However, if one thought about it carefully, this situation was normal. After all, among this batch of Shang Malian Academy students, the two most popular celebrity duelists both specialized in dragons. If these two dueled in the first round, then one of them would definitely be eliminated. In this way, Baron of the Night Noah Sharp, who barely made it to the next round in 8th place, would have an easier time. Baron of the Night. Should be laughing now, right? Dake listened to Panduola's explanation and watched the match carefully. High-quality duels were hard to come by. If one watched carefully, they would always be able to gain something. The duel between the dragon-slaying warrior and the fairy princess lasted for a total of 30 rounds. Even though both sides had drawn all 40 magic guide cards in the 18th round, they still couldn't determine the winner. After that, with the remaining cards in their hands, both sides attacked and defended fiercely, taking turns to resolve the situation. The battle was so intense that it made the audience's blood boil. Dake had never experienced such a long duel before, and he couldn't help but be fascinated. It wasn't until the 30th round that dragon-slaying warrior Luke Beige gained a slight advantage and shattered the fairy princess's magic guide ball. The moment the blue magic guide ball's mana value dropped to 0, the referee's whistle quickly sounded, and the entire stadium fell into a frenzy of excitement. Compared to the 3-round duel between Dark and Mike Owen, the 30-round duel between these two seniors was obviously more attractive to the audience. It was also more enjoyable to watch. Dake straightened his back and couldn't help but exhale. Too strong. The strength displayed by these two contestants in this duel alone was enough to shock everyone. Perhaps even the vampire Vlad wouldn't be able to last more than a few rounds in front of them. In the more than 10 years after the end of the war, magic guide technology had exploded, and the student's strength had surpassed the past at a speed visible to the naked eye. After defeating Michael Owen, Dake's slightly impetuous heart also calmed down with the end of this duel. Next, it's the lower-grade duel. However, compared to the upper-grade duels, the lower-grade duels can only be considered as a filler. With this thought in mind, Dake absorbed knowledge from Panduola while waiting. Easter Duel Festival, lower grade, 2nd round of the main tournament. Elsie Kevin vs. Mary Bond. After the two contestants were confirmed, Dake blinked and suddenly became interested. Whether it was Elsie Kevin or Mary Bond, they had both interacted with him before. Of course, watching a duel between acquaintances and a duel between strangers was a completely different feeling. Dake looked at the two contestants on the stage and couldn't help but say, 2nd grade against 2nd grade, Noble Academy against Noble Academy. It can be said that this is a complete civil war. Panduola raised her hand and pushed a strand of hair behind her head. She asked with interest, since they know each other, who do you think will win? Dake frowned and thought for a moment. He once had a duel with Elsie Kevin in the debut match of the newcomers tournament. Senior Kevin's machinery series of cards was indeed quite unique. Whether it was the assembly and fusion of the machinery components, the effect of being able to summon as a sacrifice after the components were broken down, or the final ritual summoning, they all amazed him at that time. It was a pity that Senior Kevin's final trump card, the 6-star Magic Guide Spirit, Machinery Dragon, was slightly inferior to the Basti Beast in terms of strength. Otherwise, Dake might not have been able to win. As for Senior Mary Bond, he actually didn't take the initiative to provoke her during the qualifier battle. The only time he came into contact with her was during the naked duel between Lion and Berserk Tiger. If it was an official duel, of course, that kind of situation wouldn't have happened. The Berserk Tiger's combat strength had indeed left a deep impression on him. However, that was all. In terms of emotional bias, Dake naturally hoped that Senior Mary would win. However, in terms of combat strength, Senior Mary, who had spent a lot of energy on her own training, should be inferior under normal circumstances. Therefore, he rationally judged that Elsie Kevin's strength was higher than Mary Bond's. As for who would win, combat counters steal. Senior Mary's chances of winning aren't low. Dake said. Panduola blinked and said, attribute counters aren't everything. Do you want to make a bet? Dake was stunned and suddenly felt that this scene was familiar, but he still said, what bet? Let me think. Panduola put his index finger to the corner of his mouth and pretended to think. Dake rolled his eyes and said, how about this, according to the rules of the individual duel, 100 credits. That's boring, Panduola immediately rejected. If you lose, come over and help me do something. Dake asked curiously, "What is it?" A mysterious smile appeared on Pandora's face. "A small experiment." Dake said, "If it's just an experiment, even if there's no bet." Pandora immediately stopped him. "That won't do." Dake smiled helplessly. "Okay then. If I win, senior sister, can you do me a favor?" Pandora said cheerfully, "No problem." Then, the duel between Elsie Kevin and Mary Bond began. To Dake's surprise, the previous Crimson Star winner actually abandoned the Mechanical Component Series card deck that he had used before and used a completely different deck. Obviously, Elsie Kevin had a certain degree of understanding of Mary Bond's deck. When he realized that his Mechanical Components deck was countered by the Combat deck, he decisively switched to a Flying deck that countered the Combat type deck. The Flying Eagle that he summoned with his hand caught Mary off guard in an instant. Mary Bond, who specialized in combat, was not proficient in special recruitment. She was good at using equipment card, armed card, or strengthening spell card to enhance the combat power of her own magic fairy so that it could reach the level of fighting beyond its level. Her greatest feature was that each of her combat-type magic elves had above-average combat ability. Compared to ordinary magic fairies, her magic fairies had faster and fiercer reactions. But in the face of Elsie Kevin's flying magic fairy, Mary's combat-type magic fairy was obviously at a disadvantage. Especially among her magic fairies, very few of them had the ability to fly. This was really too fatal. Helpless, Mary could only give up on attacking and use defensive tactics that she was not good at. She had one of the 3-star magic fairies hide the magic ball in her arms and use the crouching down tactic that Saraswati had once used to protect the magic ball as much as possible. The other magic fairies set up a battle formation and built a defense. Relying on various strengthening methods, Mary struggled to withstand Elsie Kevin's violent attacks. In the 9th round, she finally drew a magic card that could reverse the situation: Gravity Tide. The biggest weakness of the combat type was the flying, superpower, and fairy. Among them, the flying magic fairies that could generally fly were the most difficult to deal with. Of course, Mary had to prepare in advance. She had been hiding such a magic card in her deck all this while. It's finally here. The moment she drew Gravity Tide, Mary heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Elsie Kevin with a dignified gaze and poured a lot of magic into the magic card. Spell cards, like Gravity Tide, could be summoned in 3 seconds under extreme conditions. But the power of the activated spell card was generally limited. By pouring more magic and spending more time to summon, the power of this type of magic card could be exerted close to the upper limit. Mary's magic talent could only be considered excellent. It took her a full round to fill up the Gravity Tide card. At this time, in the duel arena, the flying magic fairies were like bombers, bombarding the combat-type magic fairies on the ground. The situation was in danger. However, she forced herself to hold her breath until she was full of magic power. Only then did she loudly summon Gravity Tide. In the name of Mary Bond, I summon the magic. As the summoning ended, a transparent airflow surged out from the Gravity Tide card. It gradually surged like a tide and rushed to the sky above the duel arena under her control. Elsie Kevin's flying magic fairies were immediately affected. Among them, the weakest one fell straight to the ground as if its wings were broken. The sudden increase in gravity caused the flock of big birds to lose their balance and were forced to fall from the sky. Although the remaining flying magic fairies did not fall on the spot, they could only fly at a low altitude under the pressure of the tide above their heads. And once they lowered their altitude, Mary's combat-type magic fairies had room to fight back. Elsie Kevin was shocked. He could not imagine how Mary Bond, who did not have outstanding results in the theory of magic, could create such a magic spell card that was like a field skill. But his reaction was also very fast. He immediately offered 2 of the flying magic fairies as sacrifices and summoned a second-tier magic fairy. It was a magic fairy that had metamorphosed its wings and looked like a wyvern. Elsie Kevin had been thinking of a strategy for a long time without success. This wyvern-like magic fairy could spit out a sea of fire with an area of effect. With the help of the strong wind, it could completely control the Sea of Fire in the blue summoning area and force Mary's magic fairies to move. And once they began to move, the defensive battle formation that had been maintained all this time would reveal a flaw. As long as the defensive battle formation was broken, victory would be in sight. The attack and defense of the two contestants were very intense. Although it was not as spectacular as the scene of the seniors, the small-scale battle was equally exciting. Mary succeeded in forcing Elsie Kevin's magic fairy down from the sky. Elsie Kevin also succeeded in forcing Mary's magic fairy out of the blue summoning area. In the following frontal attack and defense, Elsie Kevin steadily gained the upper hand with the advantage she had built up in the early stage. Although Mary struggled to hold on, she still stood tall. But in the 15th round, Mary Bond had gathered 3 equipment cards in her hand. They were Frowny Face Beast King Leg Guards, Beast King Arm Guard, Beast King Belt. 6,000/11,000, tomorrow. Does everyone love me? If you don't love me, please deduct 1. No one deducts 1, it seems that you all love me. Asterisk 3. Epsilon asterisk. Chapter 390. In the Name of Mary Bond, Magic Summoning. She stacked the 3 equipment cards together and began to summon the 3 magic cards at the same time. This was absolutely impossible. However, there seemed to be a connection between the 3 magic cards. When the chant began, a magic chain passed through the upper right corner of the 3 magic cards, forming a chain. Just by summoning the Beast King Belt, the Beast King Leg Guards, and the Beast King Arm Guards were also activated. However, this caused the summoning time to increase. It took about 8 seconds for Mary to summon the 3 magic cards at the same time. At this moment, in the duel arena, her magic elves had been killed one after another, leaving only the Berserk Tiger, and another magic elven that was protecting the magic ball in its arms. Once the Berserk Tiger was defeated, she would no longer have the power to reverse the situation. Time's up, Beast King Armor. Amidst the violent roar, Mary Bond suddenly raised the 3 magic cards up high. First website. https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP. The light rays that burst out from the surface of the magic cards fell on the arms, legs, and waist of the Berserk Tiger. The 3 equipment were instantly linked. From the Beast King Belt, a layer of light film extended outwards, connecting with the Beast King Leg Guards and the Beast King Arm Guards. When the light faded, the Berserk Tiger's neck was already covered by armor. Outfit complete. Using 3 equipment to form 1 armor, this was Mary Bond's secret technique. The Berserk Tiger, that had put on the Beast King armor, facing the siege of the magic elves, suddenly opened its arms and roared. From the tiger's mouth that appeared on the Beast King Belt, a tiger-shaped roaring bullet suddenly burst out. The huge roaring bullet instantly blasted all the magic elves that surrounded it away. The wyvern that took the Beast King roaring bullet, head-on, even shattered on the spot. Berserk. Under Mary's command, the Berserk Tiger activated its ultimate skill, Berserk. Its eyes were covered by red, and like a hungry tiger, it pounced on Elsie Kevin's magic elven. After that, the entire arena completely turned into the Berserk Tiger's hunting ground. The competition is over. After a fierce battle, contestant Mary Bond successfully reversed the situation and secured the victory. Perhaps this is the charm of a duel. Winner, second-year House of Aristocrats, Mary Bond. Amid the shouts, the referee declared Mary Bond the winner. After watching the entire duel to his heart's content, Dake looked at Panduola and blinked. Senior sister, it looks like I won. That's right, you've won. Panduola leaned over and exhaled. I've lost the bet. What do you need my help with? Dake smiled warmly. Then, can you invite me to participate in your experiment? Panduola smiled happily. Of course. Flushed with success, the horses galloped swiftly, seeing all the flowers in Chong and in a day. After the second battle of the first round of the lower grade group ended, it was the upper grade group's turn again. This time, the highly anticipated Evernight Baron Noah Sharp finally appeared in the upper grade group. His opponent was a fifth-year student who summoned a light prison during the qualifier battle and trapped his Reedridge Black Dragon. The battle between the two was even more exciting than the previous two battles. The Evernight Baron finally summoned a 9-star giant dragon, the Reedridge Black Dragon. The Reedridge Black Dragon, which was more than 10 meters tall, caused the audience to exclaim excitedly. No matter where one was, people always had extra respect and love for dragons. In the war between humans and demons, countless giant dragons participated. Some of them belonged to the demons and were called demonic dragons by humans. Those that belonged to the human holy church were also called holy dragons. However, the dragon race didn't have a side and was a neutral race. Therefore, the hatred people had for the demonic dragons was rarely applied to the dragons themselves. In the end, the duel ended with Knight Baron Noah Sharp's victory. After this battle ended, the competition temporarily came to an end. Both the contestants and the audience needed to eat. In each of the branch libraries, the audience was also provided with a variety of Easter delicacies and souvenirs. This was the peak time for egg opening. Based on this morning's performance, people would develop a strong fondness for some of the magic elves, and would want to open their favorite models from the Easter eggs. All kinds of models and Easter eggs were sold out, and the atmosphere was very lively. At the Shang Molian Academy, the professors and students also got up and left their seats. They started a large-scale march to the cafeteria. After all, it was Easter. Although the banquet wouldn't be held in the banquet hall, the food in the cafeteria was naturally more sumptuous. Dake released the little devil from the curse cage, and asked it to greet Deanna and Luosi. Then, he and Panduola followed the crowd and slowly walked out of the arena. Not long after, Deanna and Luosi found Dake and Panduola under the guidance of the little devil. It wasn't the first time the four of them were together, and they happily went to the cafeteria. Originally, Dake wanted to go to Traveler's Street to have a good meal, but he couldn't give up the Easter eggs that the cafeteria gave out at noon. Even though there might only be a 10-point credit voucher in the Easter egg, they enjoyed the process of opening the egg. That was what everyone who failed to pay for the egg said. "I wonder what will be in the Easter eggs at noon?" Deanna excitedly picked up the hexagonal gem that she won during the competition and looked at it under the sun. When the sun shone into the gem, the black shadow in it moved slightly, as if it was about to come to life. Even though Deanna couldn't identify the origin of the gem, she could tell that it was definitely valuable. "That's great." Luosi looked at the gem in Deanna's hand and was a little envious. Deanna pointed at the Easter eggs in her bag and asked curiously, "Why haven't you opened it yet?" Luosi blinked and said, "I thought about it, and it's not a bad idea to bring it back like this. You see, if I open it, the model inside will be confirmed. But if I don't open it, there will be countless possibilities inside. That means that I have all the Easter eggs." Deanna. "All right, stop teasing her." Dake smiled and nodded Deanna's head. He said, "Think about what to eat next. We'll make it quick later." The four of them entered the cafeteria and lined up in order. When it was their turn, each of them received an Easter egg. Of course, they didn't forget to get a share for the little devil. Thus, the four people and one pet took their plates and found an empty table to sit down and prepare to open the Easter eggs. It was better to have fun together than to be happy alone. Most of the students in the cafeteria were enjoying the Easter eggs. There were good-natured jeers and sour congratulations everywhere. The little devil rolled its eyes and couldn't wait to crack the Easter egg in its paw. It was the last one to crack the Easter egg in the morning, and now it wanted to be first. Pa! Yellow liquid flowed out of the broken Easter egg. An extremely sour smell instantly filled the air. The little devil flew up and flapped its wings in the air. "Is this lemon juice?" Dake covered his nose and asked curiously. Deanna sniffed and said, "No, it's the saliva of a jealous bird. I heard that it's 10 times more sour than lemon juice." Panduola smiled and said, "Let's clean it up." Dake summoned the trash slime. The materialized trash slime rubbed his finger and moved to the pool of saliva of a jealous bird. With a slurp sound, it absorbed all of it. Dake played with the trash slime for a while before putting it back into the magic card. At this time, the three people at the same table had all cracked the Easter eggs. Anna peeled off the eggshell and swallowed it. When she bit into her mouth was filled with juice. It was chicken juice. Luo picked out a piece of chocolate from the egg yolk. She was also quite happy. Panduola cracked the Easter egg. Inside the egg yolk was a piece of soy sauce-flavored jelly. Doc hurriedly cracked open his own Easter egg as well. In the end, he saw that it was just an ordinary boiled egg. Oh no! He knocked his head and cut the boiled egg in half with the knife. He ate it with the sauce. The four people talked about the content of the Festival of the Duel as they ate. After the meal, Panduola naturally walked together with Anna and Luo. Dake returned to the contestant waiting room to confirm the schedule for the afternoon competition. The afternoon competition starts at 1 o'clock. According to the schedule, there are 10 more matches. It will end at 6 o'clock sharp in 5 hours. After thinking carefully for a while, Dake returned to the audience seats. He followed the little devil senses and found Panduola, Anna, and Luo. With the company of the two little juniors, Panduola was obviously more talkative. Ever since the Christmas holiday, her mentality had obviously changed. She was more willing to get along with people. Anna and Luo were also good kids. It was very pleasant to get along with them. Therefore, when Dake returned, he suddenly realized that he couldn't really fit in with their conversation. He shook his head and didn't force his way in. On the stage, his senior sister, who was proficient in music, was playing a recently famous piano piece, Husker on his deathbed. The song itself was about the heroic story of a hero named Husker who fought back when he was on his deathbed. The sad and sometimes intense melody was very suitable for a duel. As time passed, more and more people returned to the dueling hall. People returned to their seats and sat down, excitedly discussing topics related to the duel and the Easter egg. In this gradually brewing atmosphere, the clock rang at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Senior Sister Judy, who had changed into a bright red dress, had already stepped on the stage. She skillfully made the opening remarks, quickly leading the audience who had eaten their fill to the brim with anticipation for the duel. Then, she broke 2 Easter eggs, took out 2 number cards, and loudly read out the names of the players who were about to appear on the stage. The first match in the afternoon. The third match of the first round of the lower grade group. Third year, Night Court, Paul Dulles, versus third year, House of Nobles, Stuart Phone. A classic duel between the Night Court and the House of Nobles? Dake couldn't help but frown slightly. This House of Nobles Stuart Phone always gave him a bad feeling. It's a good opportunity to observe through this duel. Maybe I'll meet him in the next match. The match began as scheduled. Both third-year students, Paul Dulles of the Night Court and Stuart Phone of the House of Nobles, were clearly old acquaintances. As soon as the two of them appeared on the stage, they secretly mocked each other during the exchange segment. Their words were eloquent and the atmosphere was full for a while. In the following match, the two players were even more at odds with each other. They fought fiercely, causing the entire hall to cheer. In the end, Paul Dulles was regretfully defeated by a single move. Stuart Phone sneered and threw out a bunch of harsh words on the spot, ridiculing him until his face turned red. After watching this duel, Dake was silent for a while. Then, he continued to watch the next match. However, in the third match of the first round of the upper grade group, the winner was decided in just 2 rounds. It was an exceptionally cruel show of crushing. The only person who was crushed by a 6th-year student was a girl from the 4th year. That girl could be considered one of the best among the 4th years. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to make it out of the qualifiers. However, facing a 6th-year student with a great disparity in strength, she couldn't fight back at all. She barely lasted for a minute before she was crushed on the spot. She left the stage crying. However, the winner was king, and the loser ate dust. No one would cry for the loser. Everyone's eyes would be gathered on the winner. The shock caused by that 6th-year student didn't disappear until the next match began. The next match was the 4th match of the first round of the lower grade group. The remaining third-year student from the House of Nobles, Winnie Scarty, would fight against the third-year student from the House of Fools, Tom Nixon. A match without any suspense. Winnie Scarty's fame was extremely great among the third- and fourth-year students. Her identity as the descendant of the Sage of Winter brought her extra attention. Although she wasn't proud of it, the gift of her background was indeed useful. Winnie Scarty dabbled in a wide range of things, but she was used to using ice elemental magic elves as the core to form a deck. This was related to the nature of her magic and her inheritance. Her Ice Chamber Girl was beautiful and powerful. It was very popular and was one of the rare magic elves with an A popularity rating. Thus, the audience who knew her better all thought that she would definitely win. Winnie Scarty's opponent, Tom Nixon from the House of Fools, although he gradually showed his talent after being promoted to the third year, he still wasn't as popular as Winnie. Tom Nixon was born in a poor family. His mother was an ordinary woman, and the only craft she was good at was tailoring. His father was an unknown beast man who had been missing for many years. Before Tom was called into the academy, his family of 4, including his 2 younger sisters, could only rely on his mother's meager income to barely survive. It wasn't until he was called into the academy that he relied on the scholarship subsidized by the academy to greatly improve his family's situation. Thus, Tom Nixon was very grateful to the academy. He relied on his own efforts to climb from the bottom of the class when he entered the academy to finally become a top student in the third year. The duel with Winnie Scarty could be said to be an opportunity for him to prove himself. Thus, he had made sufficient preparations for this duel and was very serious and cautious. On the other hand, Winnie Scarty was very casual. Even after she got on the stage, she was reluctant to put down the booklet in her hand. Only when the referee blew the whistle did both sides put their cards on the table and prepare for battle. The result of the battle was unexpected, but it seemed to be reasonable. Winnie Scarty, who didn't put in much effort in this competition, didn't get a response from the deck. And Tom Nixon, who was diligent enough, reaped the fruits of his victory as he wished. So far, the first round of the lower year group, a total of 4 matches, finally came to an end. The winners were in order. First year, House of Nobles, Dake Dimming. Second year, House of Nobles, Mary Bond. Third year, House of Nobles, Stuart Phone. Third year, House of Fools, Tom Nixon. 4 people advanced. 3 of them were from the House of Nobles. The only green dot was Tom Nixon from the House of Fools. Although there were many other factors, such as many top students who didn't want to join in the fun, they didn't participate at all. But even so, the strength of the House of Nobles among the lower years could be seen. Immediately after, the last match of the first round of the upper year group also began with the cheers of the audience. The final result was that a 4th-year student narrowly won and defeated a 5th-year student. Thus, the upper year group had 1 6th-year student, 2 5th-year students, and 1 4th-year student advance to the second round. Among them, Dragon Slayer, Luke Beige was a 5th-year student from the House of Fools. Knight Baron, Noah Sharp was a 5th-year student from the Knight Academy. The only 6th-year contestant was a student from the Magic Academy. The last 4th-year contestant was a student from the House of Nobles. The entire Easter Duel Festival thus entered the second round of the main tournament. It's finally begun, the second round. Dake straightened his collar and stood up. After he stood up, Panduola suddenly put the chinchilla grass and the baby winged dragon on his seat. Dake looked back in confusion. Panduola smiled and said, "Since you're not coming back, I'll leave them here." Dake said helplessly, "The seniors in the second round are very strong." Anna came over and giggled, "You'll definitely win, right? I've always wanted to know what's in the winner's Easter egg." Rose grunted and nodded her head vigorously. Dake scratched his head and said, "I'll try my best." People were so pretentious. They were here to win from the beginning, but they had to wait for others to ask before admitting it. Dake walked out of the ring happily and disappeared into the entrance of the contestant tunnel. In order to let the audience remember who had advanced, he had to walk on the stage with a few other contestants. 11000/11,000 Good afternoon. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.